Okay, let's talk. I'm your host, Rob, and today we are diving into the latest global reports from all over the world. And we aren't just watching the news, we're breaking down the history and the why behind these headlines to give you a deeper educational perspective. With that said, let's get to the analysis. Educational commentary and analysis falls under Fair Use, Section 107.
War between the US, Israel, and Iran. Coming up.
We do not have any faith that negotiations with the US will yield any results. The trust level is at zero.
Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas
It should be
Araghchi
at zero.
confirms to Al Jazeera he's received direct messages from the US, but says there's no trust with Washington.
But if Iran is wise, they will cut a deal.
Negotiating under fire, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says the U.S. prefers a deal with Iran, but he also warns that the coming days of the war will be decisive.
The sooner we get to the negotiation table, the better it is for all the peoples of the region.
A united front calls for de-escalation across the Gulf while Iran launches more attacks on the region. Plus, more brazen attacks by Israel. A residential area of Beirut is hit yet again amid threats to invade more territory in the south.
More war crimes from Bibi and the Israelis. That's something.
Thank you for joining us. Iran's foreign minister has been speaking exclusively with Al Jazeera about negotiations that U.S. President Donald Trump insists are going extremely well. Abbas Araghchi has confirmed that he has
Trump
received
insists a lot
direct
that isn't
messages
true.
from Trump's special
So,
envoy Steve Witkoff, but
I wouldn't
says
believe
that
everything he
does not
says.
mean that Iran is in negotiations with the U.S.
Nothing like this exists right now. Countries usually send messages to one another either directly or indirectly. This is not called negotiation, but this does exist right now. We have received messages from the US. Some are direct, some are through some of our regional friends. And wherever it is necessary, we reply to these messages. However, no negotiation has taken place, and the reports about that are not accurate. Discussions
Of course they're
through
not
messages are ongoing, and Mr.
Trump's a known
Witkoff
liar.
has sent messages directly. Like I've said, this does not mean negotiation. These exchanges happen during both peace and war.
Let's go live to Ali Hashem, who is joining us now from Tehran. Ali, so there's an exchange of messages, but it's not a negotiation. Help us understand what's happening here between these two parties.
Well, that's significant, but that's not diplomacy, because what we are witnessing is a communication channel. This communication channel might be meant mainly to exchange warnings or ideas to try also to manage the conflict rather than the conflict getting out of control completely. The fact that this
It's
is
pretty close to getting out of control as it is.
Channel, and it didn't really evolve into negotiations yet, as Araghchi was saying, also gives another impression that there's no political common ground that could help the negotiations to kick off. Especially he said that the 15 points the Americans offered did not receive any Iranian response. Neither did the Islamic Republic send.
Thanks, Keeper. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Now, the whole framework put us in a situation where this is an Iranian narrative that is opposite completely to the narrative that's being produced, or let me say, presented by the American President Donald Trump, or today by his war minister.
All right, Ali, stand by with us while we take a look at what else Araghchi told us. He said there was no trust with Washington because Iran was attacked the two last times it entered into negotiations with Washington. Take a listen.
We have not given any response to that 15-point proposal from the US. And
Trump says you've
from our
agreed to
side,
most of it.
There has been no proposal either. The reality is that we have never had a good experience from negotiations with the US. One time years ago
anybody?
we negotiated, and we even got a deal, and then the US withdrew. without any explanation. And twice last year and now this year, we negotiated with the US, and the result was an attack by them. And so, we do not have any faith that negotiations with the US will yield any results. The trust level is at zero. And it's normal that when they propose negotiations, the first thing that is important for us to assess is how honest they are in the process. We don't see honesty. This trust does not exist. And for trust to be built, big steps need to be taken so that we can be in a situation where a negotiation can even take place.
Yeah,
Okay,
Americans
back to
don't
Ali
trust
Hashem
Trump
in
either.
Tehran now.
So
Ali,
welcome to the
trust
party,
level
pal.
is at zero, were the foreign minister's words. What will the U.S. actually need to do to build up that trust if they plan on getting Iran back to the negotiating table?
We're right in the middle of a war. I mean, it's really positive if the trust is on zero, given the fact that they've gone through the first negotiations in 2025 that was succeeded with a war by Israel, and then the United States joined, and now also another negotiations with another war, and a longer war, much destructive war, and a war that was meant to collapse the whole system. It's not easy because the gap is big, and whoever is going to bridge this gap needs to bring in a lot of cement of guarantees just to put things together. Things are really out of control for the moment, and whatever is going to be done by the United States, at least from an Iranian point of view, there should be something really big for the Iranians to believe and get back to the table, which doesn't seem to be happening yet. And that's why the Iranians are just dealing in a different way, that they are continuing this war. And it's clear actually from what Arakchi told our colleague, they are preparing for a longer war, and they're not ready to stop this war in a situation of a ceasefire. Rather, they want a deal, a comprehensive agreement, a kind of creating a situation where this war would be a war that will end all future wars.
Ali Hashem reporting live for us in
Trump
Tehran.
has no
Ali,
idea
thank
what
you.
comprehensive means, so good luck with that.
Also, in that exclusive interview with Al Jazeera, Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, spoke about the Strait of Hormuz, insisting it's up to Iran to decide who can transit that vital waterway.
ببینید تنگه هرمز
You see, with the Strait of Hormuz, the reality is that it's in Iran's and Oman's territorial waters. It's not in international waters. It's in our territorial waters and Oman's. So it's ordinary for Iran and Oman to use these waterways strategically. As of now, we believe the strait to be open. Only for the ships of those who are at war with us, this strait is closed. That is normal during war. We cannot let our enemies use our territorial waters for commerce. Ships linked to other countries because of security concerns, because of high insurance prices, or whatever other reason, they have decided not to use the strait. Some of them have come to negotiate with us, and we, for many of them, especially those who are our friends,
They're paying
have
that toll.
ensured they will have safe passage. And you will have seen the news coverage of countries that have spoken to us and have been able to guarantee themselves safe passage. Now, what will happen after the war? That's something that will be for Iran and Oman to decide. And we will take into consideration our friends in the region and beyond the region. In our opinion, the Strait of Hormuz can be a peaceful waterway for peaceful use by vessels from countries around the world.
And Abbas Araghchi told us the Iranian armed forces do not fear the prospect of a U.S. ground operation and that they're ready to confront it.
من یه بار قبلا به این سوال جواب
I've answered this before, and I said, we are waiting for them. I don't think they dare to do such a thing. There will be a lot of strength waiting for them. But we are not the ones who started this war. We defended ourselves, and we did so with strength. The casualties they've faced in their assets, to their personnel, to their radars in the region, to their aircraft. You saw what happened to their AWACS aircraft, or to their refueling tankers. We know very well how to defend ourselves. In a ground war, we can do it even better. We are completely ready to confront any sort of ground attack. We hope they do not make such a mistake.
Trita Parsi is the Executive
Trump will
Vice
make that
President of the
mistake.
Quincy
He's that
Institute for
stupid.
Responsible Statecraft, and he joins us once again from Washington, D.C. Thank you, Trita. Steve Witkoff said earlier that the president was surprised Iran did not capitulate to the show of force that it brought to the region. The foreign minister of Iran, at least by that soundbite we just played, does
Trump
not
gets
sound like
surprised
it's
when he
giving him
counts his
any
fingers.
pause this time either. Has the U.S. underestimated Iran here, or is it the other way around?
The United States has fundamentally underestimated Iran. And the reason for this is because of a narrative carefully constructed by the Israelis that was sold to Trump. The Israelis understood fully that Trump is not in principle against war or in principle against regime change.
Trump has no principles or
He's
morals
in principle against adventures that
or
don't
ethics.
have a
He has no moral
guaranteed
compass.
path towards a quick success. But if you can convince him that attacking Iran would lead to a quick success, would lead to Iran's capitulation, or would lead to the Iranian system imploding, then you could also then convince him to do things that he had promised his base he wouldn't do, such as attacking Iran or going for regime change. So they pushed this idea that Iran was a paper tiger, that the regime was standing on its last legs, that it would fall any moment. And this is part of the reason why, a critical reason as to why Trump went into this war and why he's now faced with this debacle of the war.
So we had an earlier guest call it coercive negotiation, this idea that the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth calls negotiating with bombs, that they keep threatening to up the ante and escalate, and both sides are doing it. But what's the risk of that?
Well, the risk, of course, is that Trump, at the end of the day, does not have any escalatory pathways out of this war. He can escalate. He can bomb more places in Iran, although at this point they're bombing orphanages and universities, so it's not really clear if they're really going for some of the earlier.
Let's just keep killing the school kids, man.
Nevertheless, he could do this, but what
It's
will
worth
the
it,
end
right?
result be? The end result will be that the Iranians will strike back in some of the GCC countries. And so far, with one or two exceptions, the Iranians have not significantly damaged the oil infrastructure in the region. If it were to do so, oil prices would shoot through the roof, because it's no longer about closing the straits, it's also about the amount of time it would take to rebuild that infrastructure. So instead of oil just being squeezed for a couple of weeks, it would be for months, perhaps years. That would throw the entire global economy into a depression.
Along with the higher insurance prices these tankers have to
yes,
pay.
Trump can escalate, but the Iranians can counter-escalate.
We're going to be paying higher prices at the pump
to Trump
for a long time,
than it is to the Iranians. And just
even if this war ends today.
Numbers right now, and the manner in which it now appears that the Republicans are going to lose both the House and the Senate in the midterm elections, and a lot of
We
that
can only
has
hope.
to do with higher gas prices, which leads to higher fuel.
They're definitely losing the House.
Prices, and general inflation.
And the ripple
so
effects
Trump
go
is
on,
already shooting himself in the foot, but with this war, and he will do so even more if he intensifies it.
So how different are the conditions around a negotiation if it were to take place tomorrow, B, than it was on February 27th? And what, in your mind, is the most significant change?
Well, the significant change is that the Iranians have leverage through the Strait of Hormuz, and also that the potency, or at least the idea that the threat of American military force had potency, is now gone. The United States cannot force its will by threatening to restart this war. Starting it was a huge mistake. No sane president will restart this war. That fundamentally changes the dynamics in these negotiations, because the U.S. has relied so heavily.
Not even J.D.
on the
Vance wants this
coercive
war.
Elements of its diplomacy.
And he's a beardo.
Now it would have to enter the diplomacy from a standpoint of actually agreeing to a give and take, rather than thinking that it can just dictate the terms.
So how does that trust gap get bridged? This is what Iran has been saying, obviously, that it does not trust the U.S. going into negotiations with it, given what happened the last two times. How do you get them to the table? What concession needs to be made here?
I think if you have a framework that involves a couple of other countries, particularly other P5 countries, Russia and China, and if the U.S. makes clear that it will offer sanctions relief as part of a deal to end the war, I think that's the kind of steps that will be necessary in order to make sure that this diplomacy gets serious. At this point, with these type of maximalist demands that have been put forward by both sides, I don't think we will get to the table, nor do we get to any serious negotiations. So there's still some distance between their desire for diplomacy and their seriousness for diplomacy.
Trita Parsi, Executive Vice President of the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
We'll bring you more of Al Jazeera's exclusive interview with Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi in the coming hours. You can see the full sit-down interview on Wednesday, April the 1st at 7:30 GMT. Iran says a major pharmaceutical manufacturing facility in Tehran was hit in U.S.-Israeli strikes. The Tawfiq Daru Engineering Research Company produced specialized medicines. This includes antibiotics and drugs for cancer treatment. Iran's domestic pharmaceutical companies
another
are
war
critical
crime.
to the nation's healthcare system, which is
And a violation of international norms.
sanctions.
What do you expect?
The
Trump
US
and Bibi are
insists
terrorists.
It's pursuing peace with
You
Iran,
expect it
but
from
through a
Iran.
strategy
You don't
of,
expect it from us.
negotiating with bombs.
But we do it.
Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth warned what he calls Iran's new regime to
Whiskey
come to
Pete.
the table or face continued attacks.
If Iran is wise, they will cut a deal. President Trump doesn't bluff and he does not back down.
He tacos all the time. All
The new
the time.
Iranian regime should know
There's
that
a
by
reason
now.
he's called Taco.
This new regime, because regime change has occurred, should be
Regime
wise.
change has occurred. See how they're trying to
President
pawn
Trump
that
will make
off?
the deal he is willing.
They promised regime
And the terms
change,
of the
and
deal are
they got
going to
regime change, even though it's the
If
same
Iran
regime.
is not willing, then the
Just
United
more
States
hard
War
line.
Department will continue with even more intensity.
Our chief U.S. correspondent Alan Fisher joins us now live
What a
from the
clown.
White House. Alan, this is new messaging we're hearing from the White House in the past couple of days, that regime change has happened, that they're speaking with a new regime in Iran. What does this mean for the American strategy going forward?
Oh, my God.
Well, Pete Hegseth made it clear that any solution to this war will be done on Donald Trump's terms. He confirmed that talks are ongoing. He said they're real and they're moving forward. And he said they're obviously making plans if the talks don't work out. And those plans include negotiating with bombs, a phrase he used twice during that news conference. Now, Donald Trump laid out exactly what he sees as a win at the end of the war. It would be the fact that the Iranian Navy no longer exists, the Air Force badly depleted, that they can't get access to their nuclear bomb facilities, as the United States described them, that they hit the missile program and the drone program as well. Now, a lot of those have already been accomplished. Donald Trump, when he announced the start of the war, also said he wanted to see regime change, that he wanted the people of Iran to rise up, given the circumstances that the United States was creating. That simply hasn't happened. We've seen no evidence of it anywhere in Iran at this time. And of course, Pete Hegseth said, well, regime change has already happened. But what he didn't mention was that the Ayatollah has been replaced by his son, and most people would tell you that his son is more hardline and more anti-American than his father.
What did I just get done saying?
Alan, I want to ask
What did
you
I just
also,
say?
the president sent out a message on
Stable
Truth
genius.
Social earlier telling other countries that if they're worried about oil and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, they should either buy it from the U.S. or they should get brave and go get it themselves. What does that tell us about where he stands on the situation in the Strait?
Well, Donald Trump has always blown hot and cold in his relationship with NATO.
Trump throws his diaper into the strait, and he tells other countries to go get it.
But he does suggest that they actually do need their help. I've spoken to people over the last couple of hours, and they suggest this shows that the United States don't really have a strategy. When they said, oh, we knew that the Iranians would do this.
Of course they don't have a strategy.
But they haven't been able
Look who
to
our
force it
leadership
open.
is.
And the Americans
You
on their
expect
own
a
can't
strategy,
do
a
it.
plan?
And so they're now looking for help from others, particularly from the United Kingdom and from France.
If I was
But
the
it's
rest of the
clear
world, I'd
that,
tell 'em,
well, he's
pound
pushing
sand.
this view against the Allies, saying they're not doing enough. It's fully backed up by the man who he calls his Secretary for War. Returning from an unannounced visit to US troops serving in the Middle East, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth called on other countries to do more to keep the Strait of Hormuz open.
President Trump's been willing to do the heavy lifting on behalf of the free world to address this threat of Iran. It's not just our problem set going forward.
Shipping traffic through the waterway has been seriously impacted by the war. 20% of the world's oil passes through there. Iran has effectively closed it off. In a series of early morning social media posts, President Donald Trump urged his NATO allies into action, telling countries that didn't help the US-Israeli war on Iran to either buy American oil, we have plenty, or go to the Strait of Hormuz and just take it. Donald Trump's frustration with NATO now seems as hot as ever, goading them into action in the Strait of Hormuz. His anger particularly focused on
He's such a
France
bully
and
and
the
a
United
clown.
Kingdom.
Spain
What a
has
joke.
also banned the US from using bases there, a decision defended by the defense minister.
Good.
We fully reject a unilateral, unjustified aggression without any legal framework whatsoever by the United States and Israel against Iran, just as we strongly condemn the angry attacks by Iran to neighboring countries.
The US continues to build up the number of forces it has in the region. No one from the White House down is dismissing the idea of US troops on Iranian territory, but Gulf countries are urging a speedy peace deal.
Boots on the ground would be a horrifically bad
The
mistake.
Strait of Hormuz,
So
the
Trump will
closure
do
of the
it.
strait in this manner, and the threat to the energy industry in the Arabian Gulf region constitutes a real threat to global energy security overall.
Trump's frustration with NATO allies is burnished by rising oil prices in the US. The average price is now the highest in 4 years, and a useful line of attack for political opponents. Alan Fisher, Al Jazeera, at the White House.
Of course, it's a useful line
Israeli
of attack.
Prime Minister
Should be.
Benjamin Netanyahu says he's forming new partnerships with regional countries against Iran. In a televised address, Netanyahu said he's working to make Israel a, quote, supernation.
Of course he is.
We are also forming new alliances
Hitler had
with
similar
important countries
ideas.
in the region against
Didn't
the
work out
shared
too well for
Iranian
him.
threats. I hope that soon I will be able to tell you more about these important alliances. We have also undermined the foundations of the terrorist regime, which
Anybody
before
that
the
aligns
operation
themselves
appeared
with Israel is
all-powerful.
an idiot at this point. You have to be a
While Iran
fool.
has been carrying out more attacks on Israel, in Tel Aviv, 9 people were injured by falling debris from missile interceptions. Large plumes of black smoke could be seen across the city. Noor O'Day is following developments in Israel from near Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. Noor, a big claim from the Prime Minister that new partnerships were forming. What should we read into that?
Well, you should read into that Netanyahu is always on the road for elections, and that's exactly how domestically this statement was viewed. This is a line that the Israeli Prime Minister has used time and again, especially during times of crisis. A little bit of mystery, a little bit of intrigue, perhaps, for his base, but really they have amounted to naught. In fact, even the countries with which Israel has a peace agreement, like Jordan, for example. Very recently, we heard from the King of Jordan from his office that he refused a request to meet with the Israeli Prime Minister because of Israeli policies and practices, because of the outcome of the war and what is happening and the price that everybody's paying, but also because of Israeli policies towards the Palestinians in the occupied West Bank and Gaza. But this was an election speech and a chance before the Passover holiday for Netanyahu to talk to his base, to talk about achievements, how hard Israel has pushed and pounded Iran. But as the head of the opposition said, the only word that was missing was almost, because all of those achievements are not yet done, even by admission of Netanyahu.
Okay, and Noor, we're seeing more people injured in Tel Aviv on Tuesday. There's been more strikes around the country. What can you tell us about what's been happening there?
Well, we've seen a decrease in the number of Iranian missiles, but an increase in the kind of value of the targets that they're aimed at. So we saw the oil refinery in Haifa, we saw the chemical plant in Beersheba, we saw a power station, one of the most important ones in Israel, in Khdera earlier. And at the same time that we've seen that decrease in the number of Iranian missiles and an increase in potency, we've also seen an increase in the attacks from Hezbollah. Tonight, we saw a large barrage of rockets from Hezbollah targeting Nahariya, Akka, and Haifa, as well as Safad. And we have seen reports of several sites of impact and some areas even affected to the point of losing electricity, at least for a short while, because of those rockets. So all of that happening at the same time, while the situation for ordinary Israelis continues. The state of emergency will not be lifted, even now when Israelis are going into Passover holiday.
Noor O'Day reporting live for us near Ramallah in the occupied West Bank.
Good
Thank you,
job,
Noor.
baby. Good job.
The Emir of Qatar is in the United Arab Emirates. Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani and UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed discussed the war in Iran and developments in the region. This comes a day after the Emir visited Jeddah for talks with the Saudi Crown Prince and the King of Jordan. Qatar's foreign ministry says it's ready to help with any future negotiations to end the war.
Qatar is not involved in these talks. Our views about any talks, if they exist, are consistent with our very principled position that all conflicts will end on the negotiation table, and we support all of these efforts. I'm not privy to the details of the current negotiations, but we stand ready to help, of course.
Rasul Sardar is in the Saudi capital, Riyadh, for us. Rasul, more meetings and talks between leaders in the GCC today. What are they trying to accomplish?
Well, indeed, this is the biggest challenge, security challenge that the GCC has faced since its foundation in 1981. And because it's the beginning of this war, nearly 6,000 projectiles were fired from Iran toward the GCC countries here. And it's not only a security crisis, but its economic stability also is facing an existential threat. And many believe that this war is now becoming a litmus test for this cooperation bloc and its unity, because when it comes how to respond to this crisis, we are seeing the divergence of the positions. Some of the countries, the GCC countries, are clearly talking about the right of self-defense and the possibility of the retaliation, while the others are saying, well, there is no way but only diplomacy. So any armed conflict has to be solved through the negotiating table.
Yes, it does. War makes money, man.
So are saying, well,
for some people,
to adopt a more hawkish
not
position,
everybody,
calling on Arabs to adopt a harsher stance, and even openly and publicly saying that Iran's nuclear program and the missile program and its armed forces need to be significantly degraded before any negotiation. So now the Qatari Emir is on a mission here trying to bridge this gap, and he has visited Saudi Arabia yesterday in the city of Jeddah, meeting the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, and today he was in Abu Dhabi meeting the President of the United Arab Emirates. And the goals here for his visits are to secure the energy flow and to secure the integration of the security policies here, to unify the position of the GCC countries that they can respond to the developments collectively, but more importantly, to make sure that the GCC is going to be a part of the future solutions at the negotiating table, to guarantee that the GCC's interests here are becoming an essential part of any peace settlements.
Yeah, definitely, given how much of the retaliatory strikes have been focused on this region. Speaking of, Rasul, take us through the attacks that various Gulf countries have been dealing with today, from drone and missile strikes.
Indeed, so today the United Arab Emirates was the epicenter of the Iranian attacks. The Ministry of Defense of the country saying that in the past 24 hours, 8 ballistic missiles, 4 cruise missiles, and over 40 drones were fired at the Emirates. So here, and also they're saying that 6 nationals, Asian nationals, were injured as the debris of the interception fell on the residential areas. But recently, just in recent hours, we have heard that there has been attacks, more attacks on the eastern province of Saudi Arabia and also Al-Kharj governorate. And indeed, now the IRGC of Iran is saying that they have targeted Al-Kharj base, which is air base, which is an American air base in Al-Kharj governorate, saying that they have targeted the pilots and the air crew of the United States, and they are claiming that they have killed and injured dozens of them. But this is not a report that is confirmed by the Saudi authorities. However, just in recent hours, we have also seen a security alert released by the United States Embassy in Riyadh, advising the American citizens to stay wherever they are, because they're seeing that the hotels, the assembly places, and the educational institutions that are affiliated with the United States could be targeted by Iran.
Rasul Sardar reporting live for us.
I wonder how long
Riyadh.
it's going to take Trump to pull our military, our aircraft and everything out of that region,
says homes in
off those
southern
bases,
Lebanon will be demolished,
since they're so
and
easily hit now.
Hundreds of thousands of displaced Lebanese won't be allowed to return as his military continues to occupy the area. Around 600,000 people have been displaced from their homes south of the Litani River since Israel's war with Hezbollah began on March the 2nd. The river is about 30 kilometers from the border with Israel. Katz says the Israeli military will continue to occupy the area even after the war ends to ensure the security of people in northern Israel.
At the end of the operation, the IDF will establish a security zone inside Lebanon on a defense line against anti-tank missiles and will maintain security control over the entire area up to the Litani, including the Litani bridges that will remain, while eliminating the Radwan forces that infiltrated the area and destroying all weapons found there. In addition, the return south of the Litani of over 600,000 residents of southern Lebanon who evacuated north will be strictly prohibited until the safety and security of the residents of the north is guaranteed. All houses in the villages near the border in Lebanon will be destroyed in accordance with the model of Rafah and Beit Hanun in Gaza, in order to remove once and for all the threats near the border from the residents of the north.
And Beirut's southern suburbs were hit again on Tuesday, with Israel saying it's targeting infrastructure linked to Hezbollah. Israel's invasion of southern Lebanon and strikes across the country has created a displacement crisis.
Well, that's what Bibi and the Israelis do, right? Create humanitarian crisis, displacement crisis. Look at Gaza.
About
it's a wasteland.
The idea that all of these people who have fled this area of southern Lebanon will not be able to go back to their homes. That must be devastating for people to officially hear.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this kind of language we've been hearing from senior Israeli officials, whether it's Israel Katz, the defense minister today, or indeed by the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu or the Chief of Staff of the Army, we've been hearing consistently over the last days, and in fact for more than a week now, the Israelis signaling their intention to create what they're calling a security zone south of the Litani River in Lebanon, and saying that people will not be able to return to their homes until they deem that Israeli citizens in the north of Israel are safe. Now, they haven't given any indication of what their what their kind of computation is on that or when that will be, but people are afraid that this signals an Israeli intention for a long campaign, potentially a long occupation of southern Lebanon. And of course, those fears are generally
war crime
well-founded
after war crime after war crime.
Of Israeli invasions and occupations of southern Lebanon.
And my tax dollars fund this shit.
Nearly 20 years, ending in the year 2000. But when we talk about these forced evacuation orders that have been issued, and in fact one was reissued for everybody living south of not just the Litani River, but in fact the river north of there, the Zahrani River, earlier today, and the evacuation orders were also reissued. People in the southern suburbs of Beirut were also reminded that they would be forced to leave their homes this afternoon shortly before it was struck. But not everybody is obeying those orders. There are still a number of civilians, in fact, a large number of civilians in southern Lebanon. In the city of Tyre, there are about 25,000 people. There are also people in a number of villages, and specifically some of the Christian villages in South Lebanon, because Israel has maintained, it says that it's targeting Hezbollah, whether that's Hezbollah infrastructure, men, weapons depots, things like that. And so there are people who have remained in these Christian villages saying, okay, well, if your quarrel is with Hezbollah, then we should be able to remain. Now, in the last day, the Lebanese army has actually withdrawn from a number of those villages.
Warmongers. They voted for no more wars, but now they're lapping it up. They love it.
Communication with their other units. But some of the people in those villages are essentially begging the Lebanese army to stay. We had the priest of one of those towns, Ramesh, just today saying,
what country am I going to go to, Andy?
Now and perhaps never
I don't know.
He said,
I'm just going to live in a shithole, I guess.
We could leave now, and we could all be killed, and our village will be destroyed.
Maybe Canada.
We stay steadfast, and our village lives on. And
Greenland.
so that is the choice that people in South Lebanon feel that they are facing: leave and maybe never return, or stay and potentially get killed.
Wow, Heidi Pett reporting live for us from Beirut. Thank you, Heidi.
This country's already turned into shit.
You're watching Al Jazeera. Here's a reminder of our top stories this hour. Iran's foreign minister has told Al Jazeera exclusively that he has received direct messages from President Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff. But he says that does not mean Iran is in negotiations with the U.S. Abbas Araghchi also said there is zero trust for there to be any talks. Meanwhile, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says regime change has occurred in Iran. He warned what he called Iran's new leaders to agree to ceasefire negotiations or risk further attacks.
Wow, they're really trying to twist that narrative.
Will be decisive.
We already have regime
The
change.
United States insists it's pursuing peace with Iran, but through a strategy of, quote, negotiating with bombs. Attacks have continued.
Yeah, you got a more hardline regime
the US
now.
military bombed what's reported to have been a major
Ridiculous.
underground missile and ammunition storage facility in Isfahan. Iran has
Hello,
also
Walter.
carried out attacks on Israel. In Tel Aviv, 9 people were injured by falling debris from missile interceptions. Large plumes of black smoke could be seen across the city. More on our top story now. Iran's foreign minister has told Al Jazeera he's received direct messages from the U.S. But Abbas Araghchi says he does not believe that constitutes real negotiation and that Iran does not have the trust for there to be serious talks.
We have not given any response to that 15-point proposal from the U.S.
This is true, Tom.
And
This
from
is true.
our side, there has
So,
been
that
no
doesn't work.
proposal either. The reality
Trump says a
is
lot,
that we have
doesn't
never
he?
had a good experience
A lot
on
of crazy
negotiations
things.
with the U.S. One time years ago, we negotiated, and we even got a deal, and then the U.S. withdrew without any explanation. And twice
I
last
don't
year,
understand
and now
why
this
that
year,
happened.
we negotiated with the U.S., and the result was an attack by them. And so we do not have any faith that
Remember last year when Trump obliterated their nuclear capability?
The trust level is
What
at
happened to that?
zero. And it's normal that when they propose negotiations, the first thing that is important for us to assess is how
Nah.
honest they are in the process.
Not going
We
to
don't
embrace
see
Islam,
honesty.
man. I don't
Trust
embrace
does
Christianity
not
or anything else
exist.
either.
And for trust to be built,
I hope there's a
big
God or
steps
something
need to
when
be
I die,
taken
but
so that we can be in a
I'm
situation
pretty much
where
agnostic at this point.
negotiation can even take place.
In that exclusive interview with Al Jazeera, Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araghchi also
Yeah,
spoke
you
about
are
the Strait of Hormuz.
probably not wrong,
He
Walter.
insisted that it's up to Iran to decide who can transit the vital waterway.
ببینید تنگه هرمز
You see with the Strait of Hormuz, the reality is that it's in Iran's and Oman's territorial waters. It's not in international
Eric, it's great to see you back in the
It's
chat,
our
buddy.
territorial
Thanks for the
waters and
engagement.
Oman's.
Are you
So It's
subscribed?
ordinary for Iran and Oman
If
to
not,
use
you
these
should
waterways
subscribe.
strategically. As of now, we believe the strait to be open. Only for the ships of those who are at war with us, this strait is closed. That is normal during war. We cannot let our enemies use our territorial waters for commerce.
And wait till the Houthis
Ships
close the
linked to
other strait.
countries because of security concerns, because of high insurance prices, or whatever other reason, they've decided not to use the strait. Some of them have come to negotiate with us, and we, for many of them, especially those who are our friends, have ensured they will have safe passage. And you will have seen the news coverage of countries that have spoken to us and have been able to guarantee themselves safe passage. Now, what will happen after the war? That's something that will be for Iran and Oman to decide. And we will take into consideration our friends in the region and beyond the region. In our opinion, the Strait of Hormuz can be a peaceful waterway for peaceful use by vessels from countries around the world.
$2 million a pop.
Let's take you to London now, where my colleague Milena Veselinovic is looking at the economic impact of the war in Iran in Europe.
Hello and welcome to Al Jazeera studio in London. Our roundup will look at how motorists are feeling the financial pinch. Now, even though this is a shorter trading week because of Easter in Europe, the markets are still on course for their worst monthly performance in 6 years. Oil prices are now trading at $119 per barrel, following media reports that the US president would be willing to end the war even if the Strait of Hormuz remained closed. And that means motorists faced a so-called war premium, with drivers shelling out an additional $718 million for fuel since the conflict began. And it's a trend playing out across Europe, as Camille
Brent
Neville
is
now reports.
down today, a little bit.
Putting the brakes on prices at the pumps.
It's 103 right now, almost 104.
Temporarily cut back fuel taxes.
Still over
in a
100.
bid to
That ain't
protect
good.
drivers from price hikes triggered by the Iran war. A protection that the government wants to extend to Polish drivers only, and not drivers crossing the border purely to fill up.
When we see that this tourism is actually disrupting supply at our stations, and we receive such information from Orlin, the Ministry of State
Eric,
Assets and other
we've been at war with them
we do
for
not
what,
rule
a
out
month?
decision
More
to
than a
restrict
month?
fuel sales to foreigners.
And they're still launching missiles.
March,
They're still
Poland's
launching
inflation
drones.
rate
They're
hit
still
its
fighting.
highest level since July.
You're talking about taking them out in 2
Elsewhere
days.
in
You
the
sound like
Eurozone,
Trump.
It was a similar story.
It'll be over in a
Annual
couple
inflation
days.
is
We've
now
already won.
expected to be 2.5% in March.
Still
in
going up.
February, it was 1.9%. The main driver of that is energy. According to EU data, prices increased
100%,
by
John.
4.9%. They had been dropping by more than 3% just the month before. In France, teachers were out of their classrooms and on the streets on Tuesday. Even pre-crisis, they say France's 2026 education budget was not enough.
Who, Tom?
In our school, it means far more students per class. It also already means that we don't have enough teaching assistants for students with disabilities to cover all the hours. So it means children with disabilities will not have any support. It means teachers who are ill and won't be replaced.
They're against planned job cuts and are demanding better pay. This as the French government's borrowing costs hit a 16-year high. Camille Nedelec, Al Jazeera.
Well, joining us now is Neil Quilliam, an associate fellow at Chatham House and a former senior Middle East and North Africa energy advisor at the UK's Foreign and Commonwealth Office.
Who
Thank
needs
you so
to be
much for
arrested?
being with us here on set in London.
Other than Trump and
worrying
Netanyahu?
reports there from our colleague Camille Nedelec. Can you just expand a little bit on this? We're in week 5 of this war. Markets have been going up and down, in part depending on what Donald Trump has been posting on Truth Social. Do you think at some point we might see some pricing in of this war, pricing in of the volatility?
No, I don't think so. I think we're going to continue with volatility. If one looks at it, you've got 5,000 troops bearing down on the region. We have threats against Karg Island. We have the Iranians promising a response where they will hit water desalination plants, where they have further hit energy infrastructure across the region. So there's plenty there, plenty of unknowns, plenty of uncertainty, which is going to keep the price going up and down. So wherever it's sitting today, it's going to be
Yeah, but who is he,
probably a
Tom?
higher price place tomorrow. Maybe lower price in 2 days' time. It's just going up and down.
Even more volatility.
Is he in Poland?
Neil Quilliam, stay there for a few minutes. I want to get back to you, but first I want to keep us up to date with some statistics. We take a look at the UK fuel prices and consumption. Now, analysis by JP Morgan says the UK will have its last delivery of oil from the Gulf in about 10 days' time. Now, British drivers use 120
We're going to get to a point where these
million
countries are going to have to
each
pay
day,
the Iranians
and
that
that's
$2
made up
million
of
toll per
46
ship
million
just to
litres
keep
of
fuel
petrol
coming to the
and
countries.
74 million litres of diesel.
What are you going to do?
Spending on fuel jumped
Even though it's a violation of international law. Who gives a shit about international law anymore? Trump doesn't care about it. Bibi doesn't care about it. The Iranians don't care about it. Putin doesn't care about
And as
them.
a result of the war, people are choosing to fill up on fuel.
Might as well wipe your ass with
rather
those
than
laws.
book their summer holidays. Now, Edmund King is the president of the Automobile Association in the UK. He joins us now from the organisation's headquarters in Basingstoke. Thank you so much for being with us, sir. Now, first question for me is that motorists, they're already quite heavily taxed across Europe, but especially here in the UK. They will be bearing the brunt of this. What effect do you think this will have on them, considering this war is already being passed, the cost of it being passed down at the pumps?
Yeah, indeed. We've already seen a 20 pence a litre increase in petrol prices, 40p a litre in diesel prices. So that is hitting individuals and hitting the economy. If you think about it, most of our deliveries to the shops are by diesel trucks. Most of our service people use diesel vans. So that really is hitting those self-employed people. And ultimately, those extra costs will just fuel inflation in the UK.
I want to talk to you a little bit about that more, about those self-employed people who rely on these diesel vans for work. So we're talking about delivery drivers, but also people like plumbers, any kind of tradespeople. Do you think that this rise in diesel, particularly the cost of diesel, might then trickle down to consumers? So it might be more expensive to get your plumbing done or get your next day delivery?
Of course it will.
Well, I think it will, because the self-employed people just cannot afford to pay 27% more than they did without passing on some of those costs. So there are some things they can do. There is still a great variety of prices. So using things like the AA app, you can check within a mile. The diesel price may vary 13p a litre up to 15p a litre. So you can shop around a bit, you can adjust your driving style, but ultimately it is going to cost these self-employed people a lot of money.
Edmund King, President of the Automobile Association here in the UK, thank you very much for your time and your insights.
It's costing people here a lot of money.
The pain isn't just for petrol and diesel users. Electric cars, including the famous London black cabs, well, they're not immune either. Sonia Gallego reports.
It's the kind of news that drivers dread to hear. Fuel costs are rising, and for British drivers, there's no easy escape, even in an electric car like this one here. Now, while petrol and diesel cars have been pushed off the road by tougher regulation, going electric doesn't necessarily mean a lower cost. And with me here to talk about that is Steve McNamara, a taxi driver who knows all about that.
The key issue with any electric vehicle, especially taxi drivers, is if you can home charge, they are cheap. If you can't home charge and you're relying on on-street charging, very expensive to run, more so than petrol and diesel.
Now, for high mileage drivers, the cost of charging a vehicle can just add to all of those expenses. Now, while electricity is a way of softening the impact of reliance on fossil fuels, the reality is that it just costs so much more to charge at a public charging point. And that produces
Why does it cost so much more to charge at public ports in England? That's not the way it works here.
While an electric vehicle can reduce dependence on fossil
Anybody know?
fuels,
Let me know in the
reality
chat.
is that it's not necessarily cheaper, especially when a full charge amounts to the cost of a full tank of petrol. Sonia Gallego, Al Jazeera, London.
Well, the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer is holding an emergency COBRA meeting on Tuesday to discuss the economic fallout of the Iran war on UK households. Energy bills are forecast to rise by almost $400 from July, while motorists are already being hit in the wallet. Let's get more now from Neil Quilliam. I just want to talk to you about this COBRA meeting first that the UK Prime Minister is holding. It's the second emergency meeting that he's chairing in as many days. Yesterday on Monday, he was talking to energy bosses of various companies like BP, like Shell, various logistics and insurance companies. Is there anything that any government, including the UK, can do in conjunction with these companies to alleviate the situation while the Strait is still blocked?
Well, I think it's really important to understand that this crisis is going to run for a long time. So we are going to have higher prices for longer. That's number one. Number two, the big levers have already been pulled. We've had the stock release of 400 million barrels. That's been signaled. The US has already sort of repealed the Jones Act. We've seen easing of sanctions on Russian oil and on Iranian oil. So the big levers have been pulled. What the government can do, what the UK government can do, is sort of follow suit with its European partners, and that's cutting duty on fuel. That is targeting support for vulnerable families. That's likely, subsidizing public transport. This is a big crisis, and it's going to be around for a long time. So these are only short-term mitigation methods, but there are no long-term methods that the government can really rely upon.
No, it's quite concerning, Neil. If you stay there for another minute, I just want to update us on some diesel numbers. The UK is heavily dependent on imported diesel, with delivery costs borne by hauliers and delivery drivers. The price of diesel in the UK is now $2.41 per litre, and that's up 53 cents since the start of the war. Now, Neil, can I just also ask you something to do with Donald Trump? He has posted on Truth Social saying that those countries that depend on their oil coming through the Strait of Hormuz should either simply go to Iran and take it or buy it from the US. Now, he's signaling he might be willing to leave this conflict without resolving the Hormuz situation. If that happens, where does it leave
the IQ of a
like the UK and
dog
in Asia who do depend on this oil going through?
So it depends. So If that's the case, then the the countries, China in particular, may be in a strong position where it can negotiate. We've already seen it negotiate the transit of 3 vessels through Hormuz today. So those with a good relationship, a friendly that or be unwilling to do so. So they are going to be shut out of that deal, shut out of their process. And they cannot simply go to the US. The US cannot make up those supplies. So again, the price of oil is just going to stay up and high for a long time to come.
Neil Quilliam, former senior Middle East and North
Long
Africa
time,
energy
even if
advisor.
this war ends
Thank you so
today.
much for all of your insights. That's it from me, Milana Veselinovic. Now I'll hand you back to Doha, where there'll be more top news about the Middle East and all of the happenings across the world. Thank you.
Our thanks to Milena and the team in London. Donald Trump and his team have been releasing mixed signals regarding what comes next in the Iran war.
Because they don't know what comes next.
Unpredictability is part of its strategy. Defense
No
Secretary
plan.
Pete Hegseth says boots on the ground remains on the table as one of the many options.
We're not going to foreclose any option. You can't fight and win a war if you tell your adversary what you are willing to do or what you are not willing to do, to include boots on the ground. Our adversary right now thinks there are 15 different ways we could come at them with boots on the ground. And guess what? There are. So if we needed to, we could execute those options on behalf of the President of the United States and this department. Or maybe we don't have to use them at all. Maybe negotiations work, or maybe there's a different approach. But the point is to be unpredictable in that. Certainly not let anybody know what you're willing to do or not do.
Alexandru Hudistanu is a military defense analyst, and he says if any ground operation is launched, it would likely be limited in scope.
From a military perspective, I think US is positioning, and it's positioning in such a way that shows a credible potential for escalation or for at least widening the spectrum of measures that they took until now. We know the US had an air campaign and bombing ongoing. We know that they are at the same time amassing troops, specialized troops, that is 2 Marine Expeditionary Units and paratroopers. Okay? And these troops are destined for one mission, and the mission is to basically insert themselves and take control over land. By the numbers, those options would be limited. There are not enough troops to support the idea of a continuous land campaign, but for sure they can be used in limited operations. I don't think Iran is out of military options in terms of countering a potential incursion by land, by troops. But there is clear disadvantage in terms of military power between the two belligerents on one side, US and Israel, and Iran on the other side. There is near air domination. There are ongoing bombing campaigns in Iran from east to west. So the air supremacy is clearly on is very one-sided towards US. In other aspects, there are still military options for Iran. Iran still has threat vectors, like missiles are still there, albeit degraded. They still have potential to mine waters in an attempt to block any type of incursion, maritime incursion towards the Gulf. Also drones, also all these sorts of asymmetric, let's say, elements, because in the end, Iran has been in an asymmetric capacity here in this war.
The U.S. military faces several restrictions in its attacks against Iran. Some of its closest allies in Europe have blocked forces from using their airspace and joint bases. Juliet Egger explains.
Spain has closed its airspace to U.S. military aircraft involved in attacks
Good.
against Iran, which roughly covers these areas. The NATO member has also refused Washington's use of its jointly operated bases to conduct the war against Iran. One of them is the naval station Rota, near the Strait of Gibraltar. It houses U.S. Navy and Marine Corps personnel and at least 4 U.S. warships equipped with systems to detect, track and intercept ballistic missiles. The other is the Moron Air Base southeast of Seville, which serves as a major refueling hub for aircraft traveling to the Middle East. Now, U.S. military planes, including those based in the UK and elsewhere, will have to avoid Spanish airspace. Switzerland has also closed its airspace to US aircraft involved in the war. But it's gone a step further by suspending weapons exports to the US until its military campaign against Iran ends. Last year, the US was the second largest market for Swiss arms, importing approximately $120 million worth of weapons. President Donald Trump has also lashed out at France for refusing to allow military supply flights
That's all he does nowadays is lash out
into its airspace. While
because he's a
Switzerland
bully.
isn't a NATO member, Spain and France
And in way
are.
over his head.
And this all
Just getting
comes
out of
as
bed
US Secretary of
puts
State
him way
Marco
in over
Rubio
his
has
head.
warned Washington will re-examine the value of the alliance once the war is over.
More than 1,000
Rubio's
people
leaving
have been
after the
killed in Lebanon
midterms.
since the
That's the
conflict
rumor.
reignited there earlier this month.
Getting out of Dodge
Israel's
while the
forced
getting's good.
evacuation orders
I don't blame him.
displaced a fifth of the population. Obeida Hito reports from southern Lebanon.
It's been 1 month since Hezbollah fired rockets into Israel in response to the assassination of Iran's supreme leader. Ostensibly, a ceasefire between Lebanon and Israel had been in effect since November 2024. But the Israeli military violated it with nearly daily attacks. On March the 2nd, those attacks intensified, targeting cities across Lebanon.
We warned them. They will pay a heavy price for this. We are well prepared. We have mobilized close to 100,000 reservists, dozens of battalions and divisions to defend the northern border, and all options are on the table.
But the Lebanese government wasn't ready for war. Earlier in the year, it had launched the second phase of the disarmament of Hezbollah, one of the terms of that 2024 ceasefire. So Prime Minister Nawaf Salam made a historic and polarizing decision.
We ban all Hezbollah military activities and declare it an illegal organization. Hezbollah needs to give up its weapons and hand them over to the Lebanese government.
The next day, Israel began issuing forced evacuation orders in the capital Beirut, the Beqa' Valley in the east, and across southern Lebanon near the border. The Israeli Prime Minister blamed Hezbollah.
The
Lebanese government and the Lebanese people must understand that Hezbollah is dragging them into a war that is not theirs, simply over the death of a mass murderer.
You're a war
whom they
criminal.
have no
Shut the fuck up.
Israeli strikes have killed hundreds of people, and combined with the evacuation orders,
Piece of shit.
forcibly displaced nearly
Sick of my
20%
tax dollars
of the
funding his
population.
crap.
Our colleagues on the ground hear every day about the anguish that people face, about not knowing where to go, not knowing how long it will take. Obviously, this raises serious concern under international and humanitarian law, and in particular when it comes to issues around forced transfer.
Israel also launched a ground offensive, blowing up bridges and cutting off southern Lebanon from the rest of the country, creating a so-called buffer zone, which it says is necessary for its national security.
We are maneuvering into Lebanese territory to seize a forward line of defense, eliminating Hezbollah terrorists and destroying the terror infrastructure built there, as well as the houses in the Lebanese villages near the border, following the model of Rafah and Beit Hanun in Gaza.
South of the Litani River, where a displacement order has been in place since the start of this conflict, diplomacy feels
Displacement
worlds away.
order.
People in Tyre
Means get the
aren't
fuck
focused
out.
on
We're gonna
political
bomb your house.
reconciliation. Instead,
Turn it into
they are
rubble.
committed to resisting a potential
Nice.
occupation they refuse to accept. After a month of devastation, their priority has shifted from political maneuvering to survival. And the concern here is that this round of fighting has only just begun. Obeida Hito, Al Jazeera, Tyre, Lebanon.
An American journalist has been kidnapped in Baghdad. The U.S. State Department says a member of the Kataib Hezbollah armed group has been arrested in connection. The group has been carrying out attacks against U.S. interests in response to the war on Iran. Surveillance video shows men forcibly pushing the journalist into a car and driving away. We're going to take a short break, but the news continues right here on Al Jazeera.
Thank you to everybody for showing up and watching the stream. Stick around. We're going to keep going. Please help the channel by liking and subscribing. Thank you. I'll be right back.
As the war on Iran escalates, Al Jazeera correspondents are on the ground.
Donald Trump says he intends to speak to the Iranians in the next couple of days, but added he has no idea who'll be on the other end of the call.
Well, most of the people we had in mind are dead.
A lot of signs, people saying that the U.S. should not be attacking Iran, calling on Congress to act.
Members of Congress are away from Washington this weekend.
There needs to be the proof of an imminent
threat to American interests.
This was our last best chance to strike.
The U.S. Senate has decided they are not going to step in and stop this ever-expanding war.
Stay with Al Jazeera for the latest developments.
On counting the cost, the Middle East conflict has cut off 20% of the world's oil and gas supply. Countries are scrambling for alternatives. Many are moving to expand coal output. Others are turning to nuclear power and renewables. But will governments be able to make up for the energy shortfall? Counting the cost on Al Jazeera.
Hearing the facts.
A busy day for Iran today could mean when Iran retaliates, it will be a busy day for cities in the Gulf.
With the latest global news and insightful documentaries, Al Jazeera's teams across the world bring you closer to the heart of the story.
All right, I'm back. What do we got going on? I agree, man. The stuff's insane, man. Especially if you absorb it every day.
Israel and Iran.
Make you nuts.
I'm Sami Zaidan. Coming up in the next 60 minutes.
Discussions through messages are ongoing, and Mr. Witkoff has sent messages directly.
Iran's foreign minister tells Al Jazeera, despite direct and
Witkoff,
indirect
another fool,
exchanges with the
in
US,
over his
there
head.
are no negotiations with Washington.
If Iran is wise, they will cut a deal. President Trump doesn't bluff and he does not back down.
Negotiating with bombs, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says the U.S. prefers a deal with Iran, while warning the coming days.
Please
will be
remember to like and
decisive.
subscribe, guys. Lots of good content on the channel.
The better it is for all the peoples of the region.
A united
Well, I
front
hope it's good.
calls for de-escalation across the
You
Gulf
be the
while
judge of
Iran
that.
launches more attacks on the region. Plus,
a cycle of coercive displacement is unfolding.
a stark warning from the UN after Israel says all homes along the border with Lebanon will be destroyed and its 600,000 residents will be barred from returning.
Unbelievable. Where does Bibi get off and the Israelis get off doing that in another country? Try that shit here. See what happens to you.
We begin with Al Jazeera's
Christ.
exclusive interview with Iran's foreign minister speaking about negotiations that the US President Donald Trump insists are going extremely well. Well, Abbas Araghchi has confirmed that he has received direct messages from Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff. But he says that does not mean Iran is in negotiations with the US. He says no decision has been made regarding negotiations, and there is zero trust for there to be any talks.
Nothing like this exists right now. Countries usually send messages to one another either directly or indirectly.
What's
This
your
is not
country,
called
Graham?
negotiation,
Canada?
But this does exist right now. We have received messages from the US.
Well, that's all right, man. I
Some
didn't know
are
you weren't
direct,
subscribed.
Some are through some of our regional friends.
Hello.
And wherever it is necessary,
Thank you for
we
subscribing.
reply to these messages. However, no negotiation has taken place, and the reports about that are not accurate. Discussions through messages are ongoing, and Mr. Witkoff has sent messages directly. Like I've said,
And Graham,
this
the world
does
can
not
come at
mean
any time.
negotiation. These
I'm all
exchanges
for it.
happen during both peace and war. We have not given any response to that 15-point
As long as I can keep
proposal
getting
from
my
the
Social
US.
Security.
And from our side, there has been no proposal either. The reality is that we have never had a good experience from negotiations with the US. One time years ago, we negotiated, and we even got a deal, and then the US withdrew without any explanation. And twice
So
last
we
year,
do.
and now this year, we negotiated with the US, and the result was an attack by them. And so, we do not have any faith that negotiations
Because when we obliterated
with the
your
US will
nuclear
yield any
program a
results.
year ago,
The
it
trust
wasn't really
level is at
obliterated,
zero.
apparently.
And it's normal
Even though
that when
Trump
they
said
propose
anybody who said otherwise
negotiations,
was
the
fake
first thing that is
news.
important for us to assess is how honest they are in the process. We don't see
You want honesty from
This
the
trust
Trump
does not
administration?
exist. And
Forget
for
it.
trust to be built, big steps need to be taken.
You're out of your
so that
mind.
We can be in a situation where a negotiation can even take place.
Mohammed Val is in Tehran. So, Mohammed, do we know, did he give any indication then, what are these
What is that
discussions
flag?
if they're not negotiations
Public.
to end the war?
Well, Sami, I think the last line from this quote that you have just aired is interesting. He said, big steps need to be taken to pave the way for negotiations. We remember that just a few days ago, the Iranians said we want the other side to stop the attack on our infrastructure and our vital institutions, and also stop the assassinations, the targeted killings. Does he mean this, Mr. Arakji, or big steps? I think the Iranians, by that expression, mean a show of good intentions towards the other side. But the Iranians are looking at the situation and seeing escalation every single day, and more targets, more vital targets for the survival of the country being hit and destroyed. So the discussions that he is talking about mean that the Iranians are not yet ready for negotiations because they don't trust the other side. And there is also no preparation on the ground on the part of the intermediaries that has successfully led to that situation where the two sides have a kind of readiness to sit down around the negotiation table, even if indirectly. So there is a lot of things that the Iranians think should be done on the other side, a lot of gestures, including, as I said, the stopping of the assassination and abstaining from destroying vital infrastructure in Iran. And the rhetoric coming from Washington also has been mounting and increasing over the last few days about the intention to obliterate Iran itself as a country that can survive and that can rebuild itself. This is my understanding, and this is also what I've been hearing from sources here, that the Iranians are looking at what's happening and they don't see any signs of good intentions on the other side for these negotiations. They look at what's going on, what's coming.
Trump doesn't have good intentions. He has no moral compass. He doesn't know what he's doing.
As an attempt to coerce, attempt to force Iran.
He shits in his diaper and plays with it. He's a monkey.
Sit around a negotiation table quickly and strike a deal that is detrimental to the interests, the vital interests of Iran.
All right, thanks so much, Mohammed Val there reporting from Tehran. Well, in that exclusive interview with Al Jazeera, Iran's foreign minister also spoke about the Strait of Hormuz, insisting it's up to Iran to decide who can transit that vital waterway.
You see, with the Strait of Hormuz, the reality is that it's in Iran's and Oman's territorial waters. It's not in international waters. It's in our territorial waters and Oman's. So it's ordinary for
Sounds
Iran
like a good
and Oman
point.
to use these waterways strategically. As of now, we believe the strait to be open. Only for the ships of those who are at war with us, this strait is closed. That is normal during war. We cannot let our enemies use our territorial waters for commerce. Ships linked to other countries because of security concerns, because of high insurance prices, or whatever other reason, they have decided not to use the strait. Some of them have come to negotiate with us, and we, for many of them, especially those who are our friends, have ensured they will have safe passage. And you will have seen the news coverage of countries that have spoken to us and have been able to guarantee themselves safe passage. Now, what will happen after the war? That's
2 million a
something that will
pop.
be for Iran and Oman to decide. And we will take into consideration our friends in the region and beyond the region. In our opinion, the Strait of Hormuz can be a peaceful waterway for peaceful use by vessels from countries around the world.
It was peaceful
We'll bring you more of Al
until a
Jazeera's
few weeks ago,
exclusive interview
when some
with the
orange
Iranian
monkey
Foreign
decided
Minister
to
Abbas Araghchi in the
light the whole
coming
world on
hours.
fire.
And you can see the full sit down with him on
Never
Wednesday,
given orange
April
monkey
1st
matches.
at 07:30 GMT. US Secretary of War Pete Hegseth has called on NATO countries to do more to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. The waterway has become a choke point during the war with Iran, blocking shipping, hitting the supply of oil across the globe. About 20% of the world's supplies pass through the strait. In a series of early morning social media posts, Donald Trump took aim at NATO countries for refusing to help the US, saying countries like Britain should get their own oil. Our chief US correspondent Alan Fisher reports from Washington, D.C.
Returning from an unannounced visit to US troops serving in the Middle East, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth called on other countries to do more to keep the Strait of Hormuz open.
President Trump's been willing to do the heavy lifting on behalf of the free world to address this threat of Iran. It's not just our problem set going forward.
Shipping traffic through the waterway has been seriously impacted by the war. 20% of the world's oil passes through there. Iran has effectively closed it off. In a series of early morning social media posts, President Donald Trump urged his NATO allies into action, telling countries that didn't help the US-Israeli war on Iran to either buy American oil, we have plenty, or go to the Strait of Hormuz and just take it. Donald Trump's frustration with NATO now seems as hot as ever, goading them into action in the Strait of Hormuz. His anger particularly focused on France and the United Kingdom. Spain has also banned the US from using bases there, a decision defended by the defense minister.
Una agresión unilateral.
We fully reject a unilateral, unjustified aggression without any legal framework whatsoever by the United States and Israel against Iran, just as we strongly condemn the angry attacks by Iran to neighboring countries.
The US continues to build up the number of forces it has in the region. No one from the White House down is dismissing the idea of US troops on Iranian territory, but Gulf countries are urging a speedy peace deal.
Be a horrible, horrible mistake.
The threat currently taking place in the Strait of Hormuz, the closure of the strait in this manner, and the threat to the energy industry in the Arabian Gulf region constitutes a real threat to global energy security overall.
Trump's frustration with NATO allies is burnished by rising oil prices in the US. The average price is now the highest in 4 years, and a useful line of attack for political opponents. Alan Fisher, Al Jazeera, at the White House.
Trita Parsi is the Executive Vice President of the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. He joins us now from Washington, D.C. So, Trita, just in the past hour, we've had this line drop reported that Donald Trump has said it's coming to an end, referring to the war with Iran.
He's been saying that for weeks. Come on.
I see no indications that
it's over. We've won. We're going to put boots on the ground. We might do this. We've obliterated them. We have to re-obliterate them.
It's utterly clear that it is very important for him to give these signals in order to calm the markets. He is being very much hurt by the higher oil prices, energy prices, food prices, and the consequences of this unnecessary war that he started. And part of the way that he's trying to buy himself more time is to push against these higher prices, trying to calm the markets by giving these statements that victory or solution or an end to the war is constantly around the corner. But so far, we've seen absolutely no signs that there is.
Now, we've had a statement by Abbas Araghchi speaking to Al Jazeera, indicating there are discussions and he's receiving messages from Steve Witkoff. What are these discussions if they're not negotiating an end to the war?
I think from the US side, there probably is a constant effort to see if the Iranians are willing to talk, because the US is in a very, very dire situation and the Iranians are now sitting with much more leverage. I don't think that the Witkoff channel is likely to be fruitful, however. Moreover, there is also an important scenario in which even under war terms, countries do send messages to each other. It's crucial for both sides to be able to have some communications. That, however, does not amount to a negotiation. A negotiation is when they agree to terms for talks. They're talking about specific parameters, variables, etc. We've seen no signs that that is where they are. The 15-point plan that the US put forward was, I think, a complete non-starter. And similarly, the 5-point plan that the Iranians put forward, I think, will be very difficult for the US to digest. So the distance, at least based on what they're saying publicly, is still too far away from each other for us to be able to say that there is any hope of a quick resolution to this.
Araghchi also tells Al Jazeera Iran hasn't responded to the 15-point proposal.
Is very different from what Araghchi described the communications being indirectly or directly with the US. However, the framework that the Pakistanis have started, I don't think is based on the 15 points. I think the Iranians will still have a lot of problems with that framework as it currently stands, but it's the beginning of trying to find some sort of systems of parameters to get this diplomacy going. One thing that I think we cannot forget in all of this, however, any demand that there should be an immediate ceasefire will be resisted by the Iranians because the Iranians believe that they will lose their leverage if there is such a ceasefire. Any effort has to actually combine this with several other measures simultaneously. Otherwise, I think it's going to be very difficult.
My mic is
to
out.
get this through.
Can you hear me now,
All right,
public?
Trita, bear with me because I want to remind ourselves of some of the statements
Testing,
we've had
testing,
in the last
testing.
24 hours. Donald Trump once again saying,
Let me know.
Iran has been essentially decimated. But then we had from Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, just hours later, warning what he calls Iran's new leaders that they need to do a deal.
If Iran is wise, they will cut a deal.
You can hear me? I'm good now.
He does not back down. You can ask Khomeini about that.
Thank you.
The new Iranian regime should know that by now. This new regime, because regime change has occurred, should be wiser than the last. President Trump will make a deal. And the terms of the deal are known to them. If Iran is not willing, then the United States War Department will continue with even more intensity.
So, Trita, if you've defeated an enemy to the not just defeated them to the
I don't know
point
if
that
Iran's a
they're
superpower,
decimated,
but
why
I mean,
would you need
you don't want to get
threaten
involved
them
in a
to
ground
come
war there.
to the negotiating
That's for sure.
table?
Exactly. I think we're seeing here is a desperate effort from the Secretary of War to give the impression that the United States is in control of the situation, that the Trump administration is setting the terms for these negotiations and also dictating the outcome. And none of those things appear to be true. But this is nevertheless part of what the administration feels that it must do and say.
Exit may
Because
be
in
the
order for
dumbest person in the
to take an
administration,
exit route,
next to Trump.
clearly will be subpar compared to what they thought they were going to get. They nevertheless need to have a narrative of victory.
He's another one that's just a bully. Thinks he can just talk tough, be mean on camera, mug it up, and people will just cower. Fuck
Domestic
him.
American audiences than they're directed at the Iranians.
Also interesting that Pete Hegseth in that press conference today called for other countries to step up on Hormuz, not just to rely on the US Navy. Again, why does the US need other countries to send navies if not only Iran has been decimated, but as he said in the press conference, more ships are getting through?
Exactly. Again, there's a massive contradiction.
Because this administration
between
is
the
just
reality
one
on
giant
the
contradiction
ground
after
and
another.
the rhetoric by the administration. Some of that is not going to change because it's part of their narrative of victory. But some of it must change in order for there to be any confidence that the United States is getting serious about diplomacy. And the same thing is true when it comes to some of the statements coming out of Iran. If either side is adopting maximalist positions, then there will not be a deal. There will not be any successful negotiations. If either side is trying to humiliate the other, this conflict will become much, much worse rather than get to a resolution.
Trita, it's been reported today the US and Israeli strikes have hit places like pharmaceutical factories, religious sites. What is the legality of that on top of course,
war
the broader
crimes?
Question we've
You expect
been
war
talking about
crimes from
since the beginning
Iran,
of this war,
but not from
the
us.
legality of launching an attack on a country which the UN Secretary General refers to as or frames as something in contravention of the UN Charter. But now going after religious sites, pharmaceutical factories?
This whole war is illegal. And much of the conduct of it, of course, is also illegal. Going after these sites, going after power grids, desalination plants, all of these things are war crimes. The mere threatening of them are war crimes, and that is something that Trump has repeatedly done. And I think what this tells us is that the United States is increasingly letting the Israelis decide how this war is being waged. Because this is how the Israelis waged a war in Gaza and in Lebanon. This is not how the United States waged a war in Iraq, for instance. The US was not deliberately targeting universities in Iraq. The Israelis destroyed every university in Gaza and now have also targeted universities in Iraq. And I think it's a devastating situation for the United States to
Yes,
allow the
Bibi
Israelis
is a war
to
criminal.
decide how this war should be conducted, because it makes the United States complicit in a conduct that is, despite the fact that the US also has done things that are highly problematic, but nevertheless, this has not been the standard in which the United States pursues war.
We bombed a couple of
I
schools.
want to go back
That
to
wasn't
the
good.
interview with
Killed
Al
a bunch of
Jazeera,
kids.
The Iranian foreign minister saying, wherever it is necessary, we reply to these messages, referring to both direct and indirect messages. How do you read the Iranian strategy here? Are they simply leaving Witkoff on red?
I don't think until the US puts forward proposals that are much closer to the Iranian position that the Iranians will respond positively to any of this outreach. The Iranians are not the ones who have who are really squeezed at this point. It is the United States. It's Trump. He doesn't have time on his side. His numbers are dropping dramatically. He's likely going to lose the Senate and the House in the upcoming elections. He is the one who is in a desperate need of an
You're going to
exit.
lose the House for
and
sure.
As a result, the Iranians are not going to respond
We'll see about the
positively
Senate.
until they
Would be
see
awesome
that
if
on
they lost the
substance,
Senate.
The US has moved
We'll
much
see.
closer to where the Iranians want them to be.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thanks so much for your thoughts on that.
Thank
Trita
you.
Parsi from the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he's forming new partnerships with regional countries against Iran. In a televised address,
Is he?
Netanyahu said he's working
Think he's
to
full
make
of shit.
Israel, quote, a super nation.
We are
With my
also
tax
forming
dollars.
new alliances with important countries in the region against the shared Iranian threats.
Oh, God.
I hope that soon I will be able to tell you more about these important alliances. We have also undermined the foundations of the terrorist regime, which before the operations appeared all-powerful.
Meanwhile, Iran has been carrying out attacks on Israel. In Tel Aviv, 9 people were injured by falling debris from missile interceptions. Large plumes of black smoke could be seen across the city. Speak now to Rob McBride. He's following developments in Israel from the Jordanian capital, Amman. So first of all, how's this talk of creating a global supernation being received?
Yeah, I think the whole point of this was after a month of this conflict with their US allies to project power and strength, to send the message that, in his words, they were eliminating a regime that had chanted death to Israel and America, and in the process, in his view, making Israel stronger than ever. It's very timely that he gives this address. It's just before the Passover holiday. It also comes at a time, of course, when we're getting increasing speculation out of Washington about some sort of US exit from this conflict. So it's time, I think, for Israel to take stock. And in doing so, Netanyahu used a Passover biblical reference, detailing the achievements, he says, that they have made against Iran as the 10 plagues delivered on that country, which included, in his words, heavy blows to Iran's proxies, also debilitating blows against the ballistic missile and nuclear programs, and also the creation of buffer zones in Gaza, Syria, Lebanon, and in the process, in his view, making Israel not only a regional super player, but also giving it now global clout and a global reach. Also, there was a timely response from Hezbollah as this address was being broadcast in Israel. It chose this time for one of its heaviest bombardments in recent weeks, a total of 40 to 50 rockets being fired from southern Lebanon into northern Israel, from Haifa eastwards right across Galilee.
So how is the opposition reacting to a lot of positive messaging about war achievements then?
I think there is generally a support for this war. It has existed since the start, but there is a war weariness, a growing discontent, and that was summed up by the Yair Lapid. He is one of the main opposition leaders. He gave the rebuttal to Netanyahu's address, saying that Netanyahu was incapable, in his words, of achieving any kind of victory in Iran or Lebanon, even though he personally and most of the opposition still support those campaigns. In his view, he said, Hezbollah still has rockets. Hamas is still in control of parts of Gaza. And in Iran, a leader called Khamenei is still in charge. And Iran is still firing missiles at Israeli cities. And also, in a final swipe, he too used a biblical reference, saying, in calling for an end to what many people in Israel regard as one of the most right-wing authoritarian coalitions the country's ever had, that it's time on this eve of Passover, he said, time to go out from slavery to freedom. Sammy?
Rob McBride from Tel Aviv. From Amman, beg your pardon. Israel's Defense Minister Israel Katz says homes in southern Lebanon will be demolished and hundreds of thousands of displaced Lebanese won't be allowed to return as his military continues
won't be allowed to
occupy the
return
area.
to their own
Around
homes
600,000
in their
Lebanese have
own
been
country.
displaced from their homes south of the Litani River.
How
Since
is
Israel's
Bibi
war with
Netanyahu
Hezbollah
and the
began
Israelis,
on
how are
March
they
the
allowed
2nd.
to get away with
The
this?
river lies around 30 kilometers from the border with Israel.
How does this
Katz
happen?
says the Israeli military will continue
Get out of your
to
house, we're
occupy
going
the
to
area
bomb
even
it,
after the war
and don't come
ends
back?
to ensure the security of people in northern Israel.
At the end of the operation, the IDF will establish a security zone inside Lebanon on a defense line against anti-tank
Don't give
missiles.
Trump any
and
ideas.
will
He'll try to
maintain
put one in
security
a
control
security
over the
zone
entire
in Mexico
area
or
up to the
something.
Litani, including the Litani bridges that will remain, while eliminating the Radwan
Yeah,
forces that
it is called
infiltrated
theft.
the area and destroying all weapons
Jesus.
found there. In addition, the return
Once again,
south
paid
of
for
the
with my
Litani
tax
of over
dollars.
600,000 residents of southern Lebanon who evacuated north will be strictly prohibited until the safety and security of the residents of the north is guaranteed.
you.
All houses in the villages
Come try
near
that
the
shit
border in
here,
Lebanon will
asshole.
be
See what
destroyed
happens to
in
you.
accordance with the model of Rafah and Beit Hanun in Gaza, in order to remove once and for all the threats
Yeah, I
near the
saw
border
that.
from the residents
Ted
of the
Trump
north.
feels better when he's surrounded by idiots. Yeah, I know.
Lebanon's army,
Well,
for its
he's made
part, has
sure to
begun
surround himself with
pulling
idiots this
out of
time around,
towns
so
in the south,
he should
as
feel
the
really
Israeli
great.
military advances. They've withdrawn from 4 towns, sparking protests from residents who are demanding their protection in light of the deteriorating security situation. A local priest tried to reach a government official, begging them to keep the army in place.
We refuse that they abandon us, because if they leave, we will follow them. That is, we will all leave together. That means they must secure shelter for 6,000 or 7,000 people from Ramesh alone, in addition to Ain Abel and Debel. We absolutely refuse Ramesh, Ain Abel and Debel to be left in these circumstances. We place our trust in God. This land is ours. We have crops, we have soil, we can eat from it, and we will stay in our village. Either
The
we all
UN's
die and our
worthless.
village is lost, or we all live and our village lives.
Worthless.
We beg you, do not abandon us. We are Lebanese. We will remain Lebanese. and
Greater
we will
Israel
die
Project. Yeah.
Lebanese.
They could fuck right off. Let's see how great they are when they don't have our tax dollars or our
Suburbs
weapons.
were hit again on Tuesday, with Israel saying it's targeting infrastructure
Jesus.
linked to Hezbollah. Israel's invasion of southern Lebanon and strikes across the country has created a displacement crisis in the country. The United Nations says more than 1 million Lebanese have been displaced since the escalation began earlier this month. 13,500 pregnant women are among those forced out of their homes. Children have also been heavily affected, with more than 370,000 displaced in just 3 weeks. The United Nations Security Council held an emergency meeting to discuss the situation in Lebanon, warning of a humanitarian crisis if the conflict doesn't end soon.
Politicians in Israel now openly speak of the intention of an extended so-called security or buffer zone, with the destruction of villages along the Blue Line and several bridges across the Litani River.
A cycle of coercive displacement is unfolding. The message from communities here is painfully clear. They want safety, they want dignity, they want this to stop. They want to escape this cycle of crises. And they look to members of this council to heed these calls. We have often said that we cannot let Lebanon fail. Now is a real test of that promise. Lebanon is often said to be at breaking point, yet so often finds the resilience somehow to pull through. Now it is once again at breaking point.
The Emir of Qatar is in the United Arab Emirates. Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani and UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed discussed the war in Iran and developments in the region. This comes a day after the Emir visited Jeddah for talks with the Saudi Crown Prince and King of Jordan. Qatar's foreign ministry says it's ready to help with any future negotiations to end the war.
Qatar is not involved in these talks. Our views about any talks, if they exist, are consistent with our very principled position that all conflicts will end on the negotiation table, and we support all of these efforts. I'm not privy to the details of the current negotiations, but we stand ready to help, of course.
You're watching Al Jazeera. Time to recap the headlines now. Iran's foreign minister has told Al Jazeera he has received direct messages from Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff, but he says that does not mean Iran is in negotiations with the US. In an exclusive interview, Abbas Araghchi confirmed messages have been exchanged with the US.
Trump said he's going to sign an executive order limiting mail-in ballots.
He says no
That's
decision
not
has
a
been
thing.
made regarding negotiations.
You can't do that.
And has reiterated Tehran's position on ending the war. US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says regime change has occurred in Iran. He's warning what he called Iran's new leaders to agree to negotiations to end the conflict or risk further intense attacks. Iran also carried out attacks on Israel. In Tel Aviv, 9 people were injured by falling debris from missile interceptions. Large plumes of black smoke could be seen across the city. The US military faces several restrictions in its attacks against Iran. Some of its closest allies in Europe have blocked its forces from using their airspace and joint bases. Julie Daiger explains.
Spain has closed its airspace to US military aircraft involved in attacks against Iran, which roughly covers these areas. The NATO member has also refused Washington's use of its jointly operated bases to conduct the war against Iran. One of them is the naval station Rota, near the Strait of Gibraltar.
Jesus would not be happy about
US
this.
Navy and Marine Corps personnel and at least 4
Jesus would
US
not be happy
warships
at all.
equipped with systems to detect, track,
He wouldn't be
and
happy with
intercept
Netanyahu
ballistic missiles.
and the Israelis,
The other
and he
is the
definitely wouldn't be
Moron
happy
Air
with
Base
the supposed
southeast of Seville,
Christians
which
here in the
serves
United
as a
States
major
and
refueling
in the
hub
White
for
House.
aircraft traveling to the Middle East. Now, US military planes, including those based in the UK and elsewhere, will have to avoid Spanish airspace. Switzerland has also closed its airspace to US aircraft involved in the war. But it's gone a step further by suspending weapons exports to the US until its military campaign against Iran ends. Last year, the US was the second largest market for Swiss arms, importing approximately $120 million worth of weapons. President Donald Trump has also lashed out at France for refusing to allow military supply flights destined for
Trump's a giant
Israel
baby.
to cross into its airspace.
Somebody should change his
While
diaper.
Switzerland isn't a NATO member, Spain
Yeah,
and
respect to
France
Spain,
are.
man.
And this
Respect all these
comes as
countries
US
telling
Secretary
Trump to
of State
fuck
Marco
off.
Rubio has warned
This
Washington
isn't their
will
mess.
re-examine the
This
values
isn't
of the
NATO's
alliance
mess to clean up.
once
This
the
is
war is
Trump's.
over.
Trump's and
Let's cross over
bibbies.
to Washington, D.C. now for our regular segment from the U.S. Capitol, bringing you deeper insight into the debates shaping America and the world. Over to This is America.
This is America, and America's military-industrial base is undergoing some serious challenges. Drones are redefining power. They're making conflict cheaper and they are forcing the United States to rethink a lot of things. So what does this moment mean for the future of American dominance and military leadership? And who's adapting the fastest to this new type of war? I'll be back later in
Means
the
we're on the
program with more
downfall.
on that.
I can guarantee you
First,
that.
Anna Burns-Francis.
Thanks, Manny. America's in the business of making money, and when it comes to defense, it's a multi-billion-dollar business. In a moment, we'll be joined by our correspondent, Richard Gaisford, who's live for us at the National Mall in Washington, D.C. The nation's capital is the epicenter of America's defense spending. Not only is it the home of federal funding, of course, it also plays host to the lobbyists and power brokers who drive the D.C. agenda when it comes to wartime spending, and with full support from the administration.
Our defense industrial base is more vibrant today than it's been since World War II and growing rapidly. Contrast that with Iran, whose defense industrial base is nearly completely destroyed.
You're ripping away money that was supposed to go to food stamps and Medicaid and helping the least among us to fund a fucking war. So you can go fuck yourself with your military-industrial complex. What did Eisenhower have to say about the military-industrial complex? He was 100% against it, and he warned people to watch out for it.
5 major wars since
Fucking
1945.
piece of shit,
Only the
know nothing,
1991
drunk-ass
Gulf War
fuck.
was a clear success. But there was a clear winner in every case, the defense industry. During the Afghanistan war, stocks of the 5 largest defense contractors outperformed the S&P 500 by more than 50%. War is just politics by other means. But if the US is going to learn from its history of warfare, the lesson so far is that the
tried using
conflict with
AI
Iran is
at the
going to
beginning of
cost
this
a lot
war.
of money, and the
Killed a
losers
bunch of school
won't be
kids.
those making
So
the
that was
weapons.
great.
Let's go now to our correspondent, Richard Gaisford, who's live for us at the Washington Mall in D.C.
I
Richard,
hope,
paint us
Jimmy,
a
I hope
picture,
the
if you
cult is
can,
shrinking.
of the current spending on these big defense contractors as it stands at the moment.
Well, it's a significant contribution being made to the U.S. economy.
Oh, fuck you,
by
Gary.
defense industries. The last figures we
Knock
have
it
are
off.
for 2024.
I'm not saying there was no
and
fraud,
that
but it was
showed that
being
generated
prosecuted
somewhere
and still is
near
being
$1 trillion.
prosecuted.
The U.S. government.
How much fraud is
puts about
there
10% of its annual
in the
federal
military-industrial
budget into
complex?
defense.
Huh?
That in turn helps support some 2 million jobs, most of them pretty highly skilled, highly paid. You can understand why
Keep crying, Gary.
the senators and the congressmen and women
Pussy.
are so desperately keen to keep these jobs in their regions. And these are the people that General Dan Kane was talking to today, and what really felt like a wartime message to evoke a wartime spirit.
Today I want to talk a little bit about a different front line, a line that doesn't have bunkers or guard posts, but is just as critical to our nation's security.
Right.
Our
You
national
got it, Jimmy.
assembly lines.
Yeah.
In every
We're getting ass
military
raped every
option,
time we walk out of our
we could
house by
not
Trump and his
and cannot
stupidity.
do our jobs
And people,
without
the
men
MAGA
and women
rubes are
across
loving
our
him for it.
country who show up every day.
The same people that voted for
around the
no new
clock
wars are
to a
now
factory
gobbling it
floor,
up.
a
They love
workshop,
it.
a
They can't get enough of
laboratory.
it. They're all a bunch of
Build
warmongers
the
now, like
weapons and
Trump.
capabilities
Hey,
we
fuck
need
off.
to project American combat power at the time and place of our choosing.
Well, this is certainly an expensive war for the United
Some in Congress
States.
want it.
In the first few days, it was estimated to be costing something like $900
Right, Jimmy?
million
Yeah.
a
Fucking
day.
gays.
The Secretary of Defense, Pete
Ruining
Hegseth's
everything.
gone to Congress. It's asked for another $200 billion as a war fund, says that might have to grow. That has certainly raised some eyebrows here. He today was talking about supplying the troops with more weaponry, had been on to a frontline base, had heard from a woman who'd asked him for more bombs, bigger bombs. Well, I've certainly seen those for myself at RAF Fairfield.
Somebody
in
tracked down that
England. It's
woman.
an
Sounds like
American
another
air base
bullshit
where they
Trump
are
story.
operating B-1 and B-52 bombers that are running missions over Iran, and that is where we saw
Trump's an
these
idiot.
big JDAM bunker-busting bombs being put onto the aircraft there. Supplies were being flown in daily.
Welcome.
You could see them being taken across the
I don't speak
airfield,
Russian,
across
but
the runway,
hello.
being put into
Ukrainian,
those
whatever
planes.
that
And
is.
as we've heard today from Pete Hegseth and the general, this bombing will continue until Iran accepts a deal.
The bombings will continue until morale improves.
Thank you. Well, the war in Iran has shown how the future of warfare has changed permanently. Thousands of low-cost drones have been launched toward Gulf countries,
Russia, got it.
triggering their expensive air defense systems. And it's exposed an issue for the US military that experts have been warning about for years: Paddy Culhane explains from Washington, D.C.
As the war began, the videos started pouring onto social media. On the ground, witnesses documenting the future of warfare. Swarms of low-cost Iranian drones overwhelming expensive air defense systems, striking targets across the Gulf. Most intercepted, but not all of the estimated 1,300 one-way attack drones launched by Iran, most believed to be the Shahed. It can be launched from the back of a truck, costing between $20,000 to $50,000 to make. Countering these drones, fighter jets and helicopters, but also ground-to-air defenses. The U.S., Israel, and the Gulf states mostly use two systems: Patriot missiles and the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, known as THAAD batteries, to knock down missiles and drones. But it's costly. The Patriot missiles cost around $4 million each.
Yeah, I've noticed that,
and
Jimmy.
Two are supposed to be fired for each encounter. THAAD missiles, even more expensive than that. A single interceptor, believed to cost around $13
I'm an
million.
independent registered voter.
But the admiral in
Former
charge of
30-year
Central
Republican.
Command announced a new U.S.
Until a
drone,
bunch of
which was
trailer
also being
trash
used,
and idiots
dubbed Lucas.
made that orange monkey the face of the party.
We
And I was out.
Pulled the guts out, sent it back to America.
I voted Democrat
Made
ever
America
since.
On it, brought it back here, and we're shooting.
And I'll keep voting Democrat as long as the Democrats remain the party of somewhat normal.
We're not in full rate production, so we ship what we had.
I will never vote Republican
produced
as long
tens
as
of thousands
MAGA's
of
in
these,
charge
so
of it.
they're in the dozens, but they've worked very well so far.
With these interceptors being used across the globe, they are in high demand, and the U.S. is trying to ramp up production. But right now, when it comes to the Patriot missiles, the U.S. expects to produce 600 to 650 this year. The missiles for THAAD, the Pentagon just announced a deal to bring production from 96 missiles to 400 this year. The government will not discuss how many missiles they've used in this war or the current
Probably just
stockpile.
about all of them.
But U.S. President Donald Trump has
What
gone
are
out of
those
his
numbers?
way to
A few
say
days worth?
This isn't an issue.
Fortunately, we have a lot. We have a tremendous, unlimited supply of what you'd call middle and upper middle.
Dumb bombs, right? You're going to start carpet bombing things like we did in World War II?
Officials confirm they may need
You
to move
orange
missiles into the
retarded
region
fucking
from
monkey.
across the globe. Paddy Culhane, Al Jazeera, Washington.
For years, US military
I agree,
dominance
Jimmy.
has been defined by technological
It's strange, man.
superiority. But in this conflict, a
A
new
large
reality
portion of
is
those
taking
independents
shape where low-cost
voted for
drones
Trump,
are
and they're not
testing the
happy right
limits of
now.
that advantage.
His approval
Let's
rating's
switch
like
back to Mary
33%.
Ruffalo in the newsroom with a look at how that shift is being reflected across the media.
It's a cult, Joe. It's a cult.
What we're seeing
That's how they
across
can
the
do it.
U.S. news media is growing recognition that in modern warfare,
They vote for
cheap
lower
drones can
prices
overwhelm
and no more
billion-dollar
wars.
systems.
They get higher
And the US
prices
may
and
have to
more wars,
rethink
and
how
they're
it
just
builds
lapping it
and
up.
buys
They
weapons.
love it.
Let's head over
They
to
love it.
Fox News. This is
And they love
Five
Trump
giving
for
us
it.
a good breakdown of just that.
Trailer
Iranian
trash.
Shahed drones
Uneducated
pose a real
trailer
threat to US
trash.
forces
We don't
and
need
our
voter
Gulf
ID in
allies.
this
So the
country.
Pentagon is
We
now
need voter
deploying new
IQ.
laser technology to help
You
take
walk into a
them
polling
down.
place, you got to pass an IQ test. Not a dementia test like they give to Trump. An actual IQ test.
To make, but one Patriot missile fired to shoot down these drones costs $4 million per missile.
Yep,
now,
you
these
got it,
laser
Joe.
technologies
They're all
cost
for it.
pennies per shot, and perhaps
Yep.
part of the reason why the U.S. says it
GOP
is not
wants us dead as
concerned
traitors.
about running out of munitions.
You disagree with Trump, you're a
Between
traitor.
low-cost
And you're
drones
fake
and
news.
multi-million-dollar interceptors, it's clear the economics in this war are out of balance. And the U.S. defense industry isn't just responding, they're being forced to adapt. Let's head over to the Wall Street Journal with this headline.
Adapt?
America downs cheap drones with multi-million-dollar missiles, but a fix is in the works. The article goes on to say that defense companies are racing to develop cheaper missiles. And the U.S. and other
All
nations
of a
know
sudden.
they need to buy cheaper munitions and are looking outside the traditional defense industry to do so. Now, let's head over
I
to
hear you,
CNN
Xanadu.
because their reporting suggests that the U.S. military is
Lowest
already
approval
moving
rating in the
that
world is
direction.
yeah.
Take a listen.
The U.S. military has been very aware of the threat of drones. They've been training on these cheaper drones, getting defense industry to
I
build
agree,
more
Joe.
of them so that the
Forward.
U.S.'s arsenal has
Pure
them
ego.
as well.
Another way the U.S. has adapted is by copying
Can't admit they
Iranian
were
drone
wrong.
technology. Forbes puts it this way. By reverse engineering Shahed drone, U.S. gives Iran a dose of its own medicine. The report goes on to say the development of the Lucas represents a remarkable turnaround. After all, for over 4 decades, it was post-revolutionary Iran that invariably copied American-made weapons and systems without Washington's consent. Now, together, this reporting points to another shift, that more expensive doesn't always mean more effective. This is Kelly Grieco on NBC News talking about Iran's strategy of wearing down the U.S.
I've read some Rand.
Take a listen.
What it's
Back in
trying
the
to
day.
do is cause disruption. It's an indirect approach.
Atlas Shrugged,
It can't
The
militarily
Fountainhead.
defeat its adversary, but it can try to break its political will and make it exceedingly costly for a war to continue.
The war in Iran isn't just changing battlefield tactics. It is shifting the U.S. military.
Come on.
The countries in South America, they emptied their prisons out into our country. This was under Biden, and nobody can tell me that's.
Your viewers may not understand the mechanics of it, but basically the U.S. can print money. The United States is a $28
Sorry
trillion
about that, guys.
economy.
I don't know what the hell's going
Iran
on.
is a $400 billion economy. So the issue, though, is the Iranian regime is able to take a lot of pain. They will eat grass if they have to survive. And the United States will not. You know, obviously, Mr. Trump did
Trump
not get a
diaper
card
syndrome?
approval.
That's
the
funny.
American public has a certain tolerance for the economic impact, and so that is a limiting factor on what the U.S. can do.
It comes down to this perception, doesn't it, Abbas, about winning and who is winning and by what measure? Because I'm wondering if the context has now completely changed about who is winning and how we measure that.
That's true. How do you measure effectiveness, and how do you measure win? It's very difficult in this asymmetric environment. On the cost, it's true. The United States is a very rich country, and Iran is not. But Iran still was under sanctions for a long time and figured out how to fight at a low cost, and also has some shadow friends that could also feed them technology and perhaps some kind of capability. So the strategic shock here is this democratization of air power. Even a country like Iran, that their air force is basically totally destroyed and have no air capability, yet still able to project air power across international lines.
Can we pick up on that? Because there seems to have been an element of surprise, or at least misunderstanding perhaps of the situation. Kenneth, do you think it was a surprise to the US military that its opponent was armed with such a swathe of low-cost and destructive technology?
Well, no, I don't think it's a surprise. The issue is the U.S. went into this basically taking the issue of a ground offensive or ground troops off the table. It's come somewhat on the table. It's not completely on the table. And many experts would have said, if you're trying to change the regime or completely defeat Iran, you're going to need to have U.S. ground troops. So if you take that off the table, you're at a strategic disadvantage. And I think that's exactly what we're finding right now.
Yeah, I want to show our audience a graphic here comparing the cost of American defense systems to the price of an Iranian drone. And you can see the numbers are zeros and zeros and zeros out from each other. Abbas, at what point does the price of a drone, 20-odd thousand, versus the cost of having to defend it in the millions become unpalatable?
Already
We're
unpalatable.
seeing that at this point. It's the issue is not only money, also capacity to reproduce those
Takes time.
very expensive.
Takes time to make these
high-end,
weapons. They're very high
air
tech.
defense missiles and rockets. The drone, you can replicate a drone within probably weeks, but it takes months and years to, even though you have deep pockets.
Trump's
it takes
blown
years
through
to replicate
probably
that.
years worth of our
it's
munitions.
scalability,
For nothing.
and the cost.
And he's going to end up
together,
walking away from
the
this
main
thing.
issue here.
That's really interesting point.
And
that
he's
you
going to
just
leave
said
us
about
vulnerable
replicating
in other
technology.
areas
We
of the
just
world.
had Our reporter Patty Culhane produced a piece where she had a quote from Brad Cooper from the military saying, they took an Iranian drone, captured it, ripped the guts out of it, he said, and stuck a little American sticker on it. And I'm wondering if there is some kind of hyperbole here that you have to get into a war to steal the technology to have the advantage, Kenneth.
Well, the United States has a lot of technological advantages. I mean, Iran did invent a good drone. Actually, remember, they shot down one of our drones many years ago and reverse engineered it. So they sort of stole from us. But let's not forget, the United States of America invented the airplane. A drone is an airplane, after all. It's an airframe. So
What does that have to do with
the
anything?
US is not out-technologied here by Iran, but it takes a period of adjustment.
What the fuck?
The
The Wright brothers were
the
what?
Joint Chiefs of Staff, America's top
100
military brass,
over 100
General
years
Dan
ago?
Kane, is adamant America's claimed
What?
success in Iran is thanks to that high-tech weaponry.
America built the
In
airplane.
just
We
the
invented
first
it,
13
so
days of this
we're
operation,
indestructible.
Our artillery forces have made history. They fired the first precision strike missiles ever used in combat, reaching deep into enemy territory. They've used Army ATACMS to sink multiple ships, including a submarine, and they've done all of this
Great.
with the
Now try a
precision
ground invasion.
and
See what happens.
determination that comes from relentless training and trust in each other and in their weapon systems.
Abbas, are America's expensive and high-precision systems the winning formula in this kind of combat arena or this kind of warfare?
Not if you want regime
I
change.
mean, at the end of the day, war is not won on the battlefield. They have to win around a negotiating table. No doubt the United States has superior.
Don't do it again. Motherfucking piece of fuck. Come on.
Bring it up to 400. Otherwise, we're right now ahead of schedule. We're under.
I had to change from Al Jazeera, guys. I don't know what's going on. We'll try to go back to it at the top of the hour.
$1 billion are being given by great people, people that you all know. Rich people, rich companies, big companies. They wanted to see this built because every president, literally for 150 years, has needed a space like this. Many of
Shut up, you self-aggrandizing fat fuck piece of shit.
country or somebody being honored of great distinction, and they sit in a tent, and if it rains, you get soaked because the grass gets wet here very fast. It's a very wet area.
It's called a swamp, you fucking
They
retard.
do that for the White House, but it's essentially a wetland. And when it rains, you're in trouble. The water can go up to 3 to 4 inches over their shoes. That's not a good feeling for who was Prince Charles, who will be here next couple of weeks. Is King to sit in a pool of water, and they've been wanting this for 150 years, and we're building it, and it's covered perfectly. What's not covered perfectly?
Yes, they have,
is the fact that
Xanadu.
The judge said we need congressional approval. Many things have been built in the White House. They haven't gotten congressional approval, especially when the money is being not put up by the taxpayer. The taxpayer's not putting up a dime. This building was necessary for many years by the fact that I've built many ballrooms and I built many things and I know how to build. I'm not building the Federal Reserve where the guy's spending $4 billion for a tiny little building.
Oh my God.
For the Federal Reserve.
What an absolute loon. Self-aggrandizing loon.
Anywhere in the world after he finishes the Federal Reserve. The man is totally incompetent. Jerome, too late, Powell is totally incompetent, and he's got to get out of office.
This guy needs new material.
He's doing a bad job, but he's also done a bad job in shepherding
New
the
material.
construction of that building. You know, they ripped down a part of that building, and it was they say it's one of the nicest buildings in Washington. They ripped it down. So we feel, and we don't feel, we know that congressional approval is not necessary to put up a ballroom.
Well, you'll have to argue that in court now, won't you?
Gotten congressional approval, and especially when the money is all put up. This is all donations by people that love our country, that love the White House, and that feel it was very
Right,
necessary.
that are bribing you for political and economic favors down the road.
Americans here home gas prices. Today they hit $4.
We have $4, yeah, and we have a country that's not going to be throwing a nuclear weapon at us in 6 months.
But Americans are feeling the effects in the interim.
And they're also feeling a lot safer.
What is the plan to bring
Are we?
it back down?
Are we feeling a lot safer?
Leave Iran, and we'll be doing that very soon. And they'll become tumbling down. And stock prices were up today almost to a record because they did two things. Number one, we have a safe country. We had to take a little
good Lord.
detour because we had a madman named Khomeini who sadly is no longer with us. And we had regime change already. We've knocked out one regime.
Regime change. Here we go. Here we go. They're going to stick to that.
That are very different.
Try to keep pushing that.
Reasonable, I think much less radicalized. We have had regime change. We're dealing with people that are much more rational, and it's amazing what we've done. We had to make a little detour. So when the stock market broke all records just a few weeks ago, when it hit 50,000 on the S&P, I said to the American people, it's time that we make a little detour because we have a madman that wants a nuclear weapon. And if we didn't knock him out with a B-2 bomber, we would have a nuclear weapon right now. It would have been used before today. And you may not be standing there asking that question, okay? So I think we have a country that understands that. I see CNN did a poll and they talked about voters or MAGA voters, and my poll came out at 100%. Nobody covers that poll. They had another poll at 90% approval.
Oh my God.
The people understand it. We'll be leaving very soon.
President Trump speaking with reporters in the Oval
Blah,
Office.
blah, this goes on.
Here's some of his remarks on Iran.
on.
Joe Matthew alongside Kayleigh Lyons in Washington here on Bloomberg TV and radio. Balance of power. Kayleigh, really interesting when he was presented with the idea of $4 a gallon gas. He said, yeah, and the country is a lot safer now. This seems something that is incredibly urgent to him as he suggests how quickly prices could fall if we simply leave.
Yeah, when he was pressed, what is the plan to get gasoline prices lower? He said, they'll be lower. All I have to do is leave. Of course, this is after the reporting we've had today about the
Prices aren't going to come down immediately.
Military operations in Iran without securing the Strait of Hormuz. And the president told the New York Post that the strait will automatically open when the U.S. leaves.
That's true, suggesting that we could be out of there soon. That's been the narrative throughout the day today, even as ground troops make their way toward the region. Of course, we know thousands, Kayleigh, have already arrived. Marines, soldiers, and sailors, and what is a massive military buildup with another aircraft carrier on the way.
Yeah.
Markets were very optimistic about the direction of rhetoric today. Tomorrow, anyone's guess on what happens. This was the end of the quarter, and there could have been a lot of noise behind those numbers.
Well, certainly. The president now telling reporters the U.S. will leave Iran within 2 or 3 weeks. So will he stick to that timeline, and is that enough for the market? I guess we'll have to find out tomorrow.
That's right. We shall.
Sending in another aircraft carrier.
Catch up on everything we've been covering on
But we're going to be leaving in a couple of weeks.
Thanks for joining us on Balance of Power. Alongside Joe Matthew,
Okay.
I'm Kayleigh Lyons. This is Bloomberg.
The war's over. It's just getting started. They're obliterated.
Are heading to the Middle East.
We've won. We're sending in more troops.
He's looking at putting boots on the ground.
This is going to be a short-term excursion.
Trust Bloomberg for
Short-term excursion.
Things are not de-intensifying.
A lot of fear here in Europe. Ukraine is being left out in the cold.
Up-to-the-minute reporting.
The report has been hit.
Missiles have struck the U.S. Embassy.
And the analysis you need.
The United States military has shown its might. Now it's time to please calm down.
Nobody covers geopolitics like Bloomberg.
Tariffs, I think, are probably the first time in my career I've had to deal with like a fundamental change in government policy in terms of how we think about how markets work.
The challenge, especially within my supply chain, is now how do you have enough productivity initiatives to offset the increased cost of all the product?
Can you just move your supply chain out of China and into the U.S. or out of Mexico and up to Canada? Is it that easy?
It's not that easy, but we do have flexibility. And we had been, prior to tariffs, prior to any of this, we had been on a journey to diversify our footprint out of China. So probably 2-ish years ago, roughly 65% of our toy and game volume was coming from China. Today, as we entered into 2025, that was around 50%. All we've done is really accelerate the path to get down to roughly, call it 30% by the time we enter into 2027. For us, I mean, if tariffs stay, if tariffs go, it's never good to have so much of your manufacturing base centered on one geography. We think the diversification is good, but it does take a bit of time to get vendors and suppliers up to speed. Quality is a big deal, especially when you're dealing with toys and kids. It's not an instantaneous thing, but it's not also a 5-year, have to build a new plant from scratch.
Welcome to Bloomberg This Weekend. I'm David Burr.
I'm Lisa Mateo.
And I'm Christina Ruffini. We're tracking breaking news today from Wall Street to Washington.
Let's start overseas. The sector is really propelling this deal forward.
Yeah, the hope is this will open up new markets and provide some additional liquidity.
Of course, now they're going to have competitors. We got a big week coming up in politics.
Earnings season is underway. We're going to get some key reports.
Everything you need to know before the markets open on Monday.
Bloomberg This Weekend, bringing a little Bloomberg into your weekend routine.
Guys, buckle up.
Power Players is back to take a look under the hood of the business of Formula One.
Hi, I'm here to see Pierre Gasly.
Welcome to my workplace.
Do you feel
There will be a slaughter.
Massive.
All right, let's see what we can do here.
Ferrari is the best example that we can be very proud of the past.
I mean, the advantage from the standpoint of defense is they don't go very fast relative to a F-22, that plane right over there.
F-22, the plane right over
They can be
there.
also shot out of the air by high quality aircraft, which we have more than anybody ever had.
And there was a viral video this week. I don't know if you saw it. Army helicopters hovering near Kid Rock's house in Nashville. Did you see that?
I didn't see it, no, but I'm sure they had a good time.
Fucking A, man.
Helicopters have been suspended.
What a piece of shit.
Well, it depends. Are they? Well, they probably shouldn't have been doing it. Yes, you're not supposed to be playing games, right? But I'd take a look at it. They like Kid Rock. I like Kid Rock. Maybe they were trying to defend him.
Nobody likes Kid Rock. Go fuck yourself, you orange weirdo.
Does Iran have to make a deal for the U.S. to end its operation in Iran? And
No,
have you spoken, and
Iran
have you
doesn't have
spoken
to.
directly?
Iran doesn't have to make a deal. No. Yeah, I've spoken to a lot of people. It's a new regime. They are much more accessible. They are right. They said, we have a present for you, Mr. President, out of respect. And they said, wait a minute, you wanted me to answer the question? You're
What a
fresh
lunatic.
person.
Oh, fuck you. Shut up. What? He always picks on the female reporters. He's a fucking bully and a piece of shit, and he needs to be fucking slapped around.
They are, for a long period of time, put into the Stone Ages, and they won't be able to come up with a nuclear weapon. Then we'll leave. Whether we have a deal or not, it's irrelevant. Now, it's possible that we'll have a deal because they want to make a deal. They want to make a deal more than I want to make a deal. But in a fairly short period of time, we'll be finished.
They say they don't care about a deal.
Do a nuclear weapon for years. And when they are ready, maybe in a long time from now, able to do a nuclear weapon, you'll have a president that will be like me and that he will go there and he'll knock the hell out of them again because they cannot have a nuclear weapon. They are very radicalized.
With absolutely no evidence that they had a nuclear weapon or were close to a nuclear weapon.
The leadership we're dealing with now, with the new regime, because we have a new regime.
Here we go. Got a new regime. Got a new regime. It's the same as the old regime, but it's a new regime.
The government threatened a bunch of U.S. companies today in the region, including Google, Apple.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Like and subscribe, buddy.
Threaten them with BB guns? Or,
well, that's a
they don't have much.
Why is he retarded? I don't know. Look at him.
I mean,
Listen to him. Listen to him, Data.
What did they threaten him with? I don't know.
It's a fucking retard.
Well, all I know is that they threatened him, sir.
What does that mean?
Fair enough.
He said something nasty?
Is the government in touch with these companies? Are you helping to backstop them?
You don't even know what the threat was. What was the threat? I haven't heard it. What was the threat? Did they say
Never,
they're going to
Data.
blow him up?
Never.
They're not, you know what they're not going to do? They're not going to hit him with a nuclear weapon.
Oh, my God.
No.
Iran started to see issues in the morning that they will
See, it's funny. Russia's got nukes. We ain't doing nothing about that. China's got nukes. We ain't doing nothing about that. North Korea's got nukes. We ain't doing nothing about that.
Most of those people are dead already.
But all of a sudden, this is vital.
I got one. Your son Eric posted a photo of what will be the Trump Presidential Library. It's a huge skyscraper.
It's going to be filled with coloring books and pop-up books.
Well, it's a library. It's a museum or a library. It's a presidential. But I wouldn't start it till I'm out of office. I don't believe in building libraries or museums. It's really like the
You've never
Barack
been
Hussein
inside a
Obama
library
one in
or a
Chicago.
museum. You fucking
It's not a
retard.
good location, and it's a very unattractive building that's seriously late and seriously over budget. I think you're going to see a great one here, and it'll go up on time, on budget, best location in Miami. They say it's the best block in Miami, and the state worked with us.
People live in the floors.
No, it's going to be most likely a hotel. You know, this concept could be office, but it's most likely going to be a
Hotel.
with a
Of course it'll be a
beautiful
hotel.
building underneath, and a 747 Air Force One in the lobby, which is going to be a trick.
And the Supreme
I'm all
Court
for it,
wants to
Joy.
hear arguments about
All for
your executive order trying to get rid of birthright citizenship.
And I'm going.
Just hearing him talk just is like nails on a
Because
chalkboard.
I have listened to this argument for so long, and this is not about
I can't with him.
Chinese
I can't.
billionaires or billionaires from other
He's
countries
the
who all of a sudden
dumbest
have 75
president
children or
ever,
59
and it's
children in
not
one
even
case, or
close.
10 children becoming American citizens. This was about slaves. And if you take a look, slaves, we're talking about slaves from the Civil War.
Oh, please
And
say
if you
something
take a look
racist.
at when it was filed, all of this legislation, all of this, everything having to do with birthright citizenship, it was at the end of the Civil War. The reason was it had to do with the babies
So what?
of
So what?
slaves. and the
Listen to me. Back in the
protection of
90s, I heard
babies of
Limbaugh
slaves.
talk all the time
didn't
about
have
how
to do with the
the
protection
documents of the founding fathers, the constitutions, were not a living document, and they were to be taken at their word
citizenship. It
for
is the
all time.
craziest thing I've ever seen. It's
That's
been
when
so
Democrats were in
badly
charge, when
handled
Clinton was
by
in the
legal
White
people
House.
over the years.
And now all of a sudden the Republican
look
Party
at
is
the
about,
original
these documents
birthright
are living documents and they
citizenship
should be
papers,
changed
they all happened
because
right
of
after
we
the
live in
Civil
changing
War.
times.
The reason was it had to do with the babies of slaves. And hopefully it's going to say, because our country is being scammed. We're getting all of these people, they're selling the rights to them. People are making a living, a big living.
What
getting
the
hundreds
fuck
of
are you
thousands and
talking
even
about?
millions of dollars from bringing people in and saying, congratulations, your whole family is going to
His hands
be a
are moving.
citizen of
Means
the
he's
United
lying.
States of America. That's not what it was for. It wasn't for billionaires bringing people in or family in. It was for the children of slaves. And what you really have to do, and I don't think the lawyers talk about it as much, look at when the Civil War ended and look at the date of when this was enacted. Okay.
The fuck does that have to do with anything?
The opening of the Supreme Court in the last administration.
And which justices will you be listening for most closely?
I love a few of them. I don't like some others. And you know, you say what you want, but you'd have the ones that were appointed by Barack Hussein Obama and Biden.
Barack Hussein Obama.
Okay,
there it
how good
is.
your case is.
There's your
You can have
racism.
the greatest case ever. They're going to rule against you. They always do.
I rule
It's
against
not
you.
supposed to
I
be
always
that way.
do.
Now, the Republicans tend to be very different. They want to show how honorable they are. So a man can appoint them and they can rule against him. It's so proud of it. We're so proud we ruled against Trump. We're so proud. We're above it. There are those that say that's wonderful, and there are those that say they're so stupid. But the Democrats never fail
God.
at one thing. When Barack Hussein
He's just
Obama
rambling.
or when Biden appoints somebody,
He's
they
just
go along
rambling.
that
What
line.
is he saying?
You can have the greatest case in
Does anybody know what he's
history,
talking about now?
and almost, I guess I have to say almost, maybe I don't have to say it, almost without fail, those people, 4 of them, sometimes 5 of them, but 4 of them will vote against you. You don't have a chance. You don't have a chance. And that's not what the court system is. Now, the Republican appointees tend to go, and this has been long before me. This has been for many years. Some people would call it stupidity. Some people would call it disloyal. Some people would say they're right in doing it. And I don't mind being right, but the other side almost never does it. Almost. I think you could find maybe a couple of instances. Almost never does. When
Never does what?
A Democrat appoints a judge, and I'm talking about judges, not just justices. You go before some of these Democrat judges in Washington, D.C., and you don't have a chance. That's why I gave pardons to hundreds of people that were so badly treated, having to do with J6. Yeah.
President South America. Next.
Oh, do you have a question? Yeah. Let's go. I didn't see you over there. Sorry. You've been so nice. Here we go. Now she's gonna hit me with a bad one. Go ahead.
On the Save America Act, Mr. President, do you still think it's going to pass? Were you
I
signing?
don't know. It's the craziest thing. The Democrats are totally against it. Again, they're unified. I think maybe you would have Fetterman, who I have a lot of respect for, but the Democrats are unified against it, and you need Democrat votes. Unless you do something smart called the filibuster, terminate the filibuster, which they should do. Republicans should do that, but there are a couple of Republicans.
Yeah, please do that.
Maybe they're not so smart because the Democrats will do it on the first day in office, maybe the first hour. It's a question, will it be the first hour or the first day? So who can believe that a person, you can't even get it to the floor, that a person wouldn't vote for, think of it, for citizenship, proof of citizenship, for voter identification.
Hey, that's on you to pay for, asshole. That's not on us.
For the military,
fuck you.
for people that are sick.
That's up to the states.
People that are traveling, for the disabled. We have very generous.
You don't have any say in any of this.
But who would believe that?
Oh, that's, God damn it.
Iran doesn't have to make a deal with me when we feel that for a long period of time they'll be put in the
He's got to feel it in his bones.
They will not have a nuclear weapon. We will leave. An important statement there by the US President Donald Trump referring to the conflict with Iran. He went on to give a timetable, answering a reporter's question about when he thinks the US will be ready to leave. And he said, in 2 to 3 weeks, and repeated again, we will leave soon. All right, let's bring up now Rosalind Jordan.
Yeah, please get him off the screen. Thank God.
Said, we've also got Mohammed Val.
Thanks, RD.
In Tehran.
Like and subscribe, buddy. Thanks for coming.
This is the first indication, is it not, of a specific number of weeks for an end to this conflict?
Well, there had been reporting in the last 24 hours from unnamed administration sources indicating that the U.S. president was anxious to try to wrap up this war, which began on February 28th, within the next couple of weeks for a couple of reasons. One, the war is incredibly unpopular with U.S. citizens, and especially U.S. voters. It's especially unpopular among independent voters who make the difference.
Don't forget to like and subscribe, Tom.
And this is an election year between whether a Republican candidate wins or a Democratic candidate wins. The president is also very keenly aware that people are unhappy with rising prices. Inflation is back. It is said to be back above 4%. The price of a fuel, of a gallon of unleaded fuel, regular unleaded fuel, or 3.7 liters, is above $4. A reporter asked the president about that. People very much look at the cost of putting gasoline into their cars and at the cost
Trump doesn't care about the average American. He just cares about himself.
They're doing well,
his self-aggrandizing, building himself a ballroom
doing well economically, they
in
take
an
it out
arch
on the party in power. And so for those reasons, according to reports in the last 24 hours, the U.S. President Donald Trump is keen to end this war in order to try to regain some of the popularity which he has lost because of this war.
33% approval rating.
Clarify, the first time we're hearing 2 to 3 weeks.
The GOP is going to get trounced in November.
4 to 6. So I think that we put that in perspective. He also talked about not needing to make a deal, right? Actually, I'm sorry, Rosalind. I'm going to have to interrupt you. We're going to go back to Donald Trump.
Oh, my God. Don't go back to Trump.
Think of it. They are roaming the skies over Tehran. They're not even being shot at because their equipment's been totally decimated. They have nothing to shoot. They have no navy. They have no
Hitler
anything.
thought he was smarter than his generals too. Oh, god damn. Fucking Al Jazeera.
They admit they're losing. They're begging to make a deal. And if you read the fake New York Times, a
No, they're
corrupt
not.
newspaper, where I'm suing them and I think very well.
If his hands are moving, he's lying,
think,
folks. If his hands are moving, he's lying.
It's so fraudulent. But just to finish up with the New York Times, if you read the New York Times prior to my election victory, including the first one and the second one too, I won 3 times. I won 3 times.
Won 3 times.
Let's go to the third victory. If you read the New York
The guy with
Times,
dementia
you would
that
say,
never left his basement kicked your fucking bitch orange ass. And it wasn't even close.
I won the Electoral College in a massive number, right? Massive. I won the counties, 86% of the counties I won. All of these different things.
Thanks for
Winning
coming,
the
Smash.
popular
Don't
vote
forget to
for
like and subscribe.
Republicans, pretty amazing. But if you read the New York Times for months and months and months, you were hearing, oh, Trump is doing so badly. We have to straighten out our media. The reason their circulation
Thanks,
is
John.
way down, the New York Times
Okay.
circulation, has gone way down. Washington Post is almost extinct. The papers that are being dishonest, papers generally, people don't believe the media. And to finish, I got 93%.
So just hearing there Donald Trump reiterate how
The
he
fuck are you
sees it,
talking
that,
about, John?
The Iranian military has been completely decimated, saying they have no navy, no military, no nothing, and they're begging to make a deal.
John,
Let's go
you
back
and
to
Vernon are
Rosalind
sad
Jordan.
people.
And Rosalind, once again, we heard him say there that Iran doesn't have to make a deal.
So?
In order for him,
Everybody
as he put it, to
hated
leave
Trump.
Iran, when we feel
And they
that
hate him
they've
again.
Been put in the Stone Age when they can't make a nuclear weapon.
That's why he lost.
Will leave. Does that change?
He completely fucked up handling of COVID, fucked up the economy, and he lost.
There are talks and they're
Because he's a
going very
loon.
well.
And then 4 years later, people forgot that he was a
it's
loon and they
confusing
voted for him
because
again.
there's also the question
And now
of
they
what to
remember, oh
do
yeah, he's a
about
fucking loon.
Iran's reported stores of uranium, some 600 kilograms of processed uranium, I believe.
They
it's
sat
60%
home or they
or so,
voted for
very
Trump.
close to
You're
what you would
talking
need
about middle of
in
the
order
road
to
voters,
build
independent
nuclear,
voters.
Warheads. What happens to that material? Would the U.S. be willing to end in war without guaranteeing that that uranium has been locked up and so that the Iranians could not use it for military purposes? No one has raised that question during this intervention in the Oval Office, but that doesn't mean that the question still isn't out there. There's also the question of whether the U.S. Would be prepared for ongoing
progress,
Iranian
Vernon?
retaliatory actions because, as
Vernon,
Iranian
are you
officials have
subscribed
said
yet?
in the past
Like and
day or
subscribe,
so,
buddy.
they have been attacked twice while they were trying to negotiate with the United States and other countries about their nuclear ambitions. Who's to say that the Iranians would not seize the opportunity to try to regain some ground, as it were? So these questions are still outstanding. It's very confusing. If the president says he doesn't need to have a deal, then why are negotiations taking place? A lot of confusing comments coming from this administration.
All right. Al Jazeera's correspondent Rosalind Jordan there from Washington, D.C. Let's take it to Mohammed Val. He's live for us in Tehran. And Mohammed, I'm sure you've been hearing those statements. Let's start, first of all, with 2 to 3 weeks. I guess the question is, have we had any indication from Iranian officials that they will be ready to
Okay,
end
John,
in
when
2
you
to
figure
3
it out,
weeks?
let me
Al
know, okay,
Jazeera's been
buddy?
speaking,
Why don't you
to
call
the
up the
Iranian
pillow
foreign
guy
minister.
and you can do more
He's given
bullshit
a
investigations into it
different
and prove
indication,
voter
right?
fraud. This has been litigated and relitigated for years now. You've got absolutely nothing. Zero evidence. Zero evidence that 2020 was rigged or stolen. Zero. And that's all you'll ever have because it didn't happen.
With a ceasefire deal, which here will be interpreted, as I said, an open-ended situation, which can be resumed any time in the future. And that means the Iranians will be taking their the necessary measures to try to fix what has been destroyed and build more weapons. For them, they can see it as a victory of sorts, because it means no conditions have been imposed on them after weeks of talking about those 15 points. So they can see it as a positive thing for them, because they will consider.
Show me your proof, John. Show me your proof. Let's go.
Destroyed,
Call up
to
the pillow
extent that
guy.
the Americans are talking about, and the regime change that the Americans say.
Go do your
for
17th
Iranians, they
recount in
haven't seen
Arizona
that
or down
happening
in Georgia or
because
wherever.
RGC is still very much in
Zero
control.
evidence.
And
Zero.
The new Supreme Leader is very much
Deal
in
with
control
it.
also
Your boy
of
lost.
the leaders here. So, I mean, for the Iranians, they will see this as victory, and they will see this as an opportunity to rebuild what has been destroyed and probably manufacture new weapons. They still have, as Rose said, they still have their uranium, their enriched uranium. They still have the Strait of Hormuz under their control. For 2 or 3
I don't have to
weeks,
figure
Iranians
anything
are saying
out,
that they have what
John.
it takes to continue the fight.
I
They still
believe the
have
numbers.
missiles, they still have drones.
I believe the truth.
And
I believe in reality.
I'm sure it will be
Biden
seen
won,
here as a very
fair and
positive,
square,
thing if it
because
happens
people
like
hate
that. But
Trump.
Also, an
Period.
open-ended war.
When you
means
come
that
up
they
with
have to
evidence
brace
that
for
shows
more
otherwise,
attacks in the
let me
future,
know.
and that's what they have said since the beginning of this war. They have no trust in any gestures of peace or reconciliation, and that's why they have been very hesitant, very reticent regarding going to the negotiation table.
Sedition? Make sedition great
And
again?
in
What
fact,
sedition?
In our
Andrew?
exclusive interview with the Iranian foreign minister, he was spelling out how there have been no negotiations whatsoever, although he did say he was having exchanges, discussions,
Which fake elections?
including some direct messages from Steve Witkoff, right?
That's right. For the first time, the Iranian foreign minister talked about direct communication between him and Steve Witkoff. And that's something that Donald Trump has been hinting at somehow, said we talked to people in Iran, but he did not mention names. We don't know if those people are Mr. Arakji or someone else. The name of the Speaker of the Parliament was also interpreted as one of those people.
Who found 30,000 illegal aliens voted?
Donald Trump is
Stop,
talking about
dude.
a regime change that has been effected. And
Illegal
that the
aliens
new
don't
regime
vote.
is much better. Well, I mean, here in Iran, that doesn't seem to be the case. So, I mean, talking about the communication and the level of exchange.
So wait,
of
Andrew, are
messages
you agreeing
for
with
the
John?
Iranians, this is
You think 2020 was stolen?
Early regarding negotiations. This doesn't mean negotiations, because negotiations mean that the two sides submit their terms, and there is a venue for that, and there are delegations and so on. So none of that has happened so far. It is just remote communications.
It's always going to come out, right, John? It's always down the road. 2 weeks, 2 weeks. We're going to have healthcare in 2 weeks. We're going to have proof of voter fraud in 2 weeks, 2 weeks.
And they are saying that
it's always going to come out sometime in the future. Got it, buddy.
Escalation, and they have their demands. They want to stop to those strikes, and they want to stop to the targeted
Trump is a
assassinations
warmonger, Curtis. You got that right.
Big steps that have been mentioned by Arakji as big steps that have to be taken to prove to the Iranians that there is goodwill, and there is a kind of common ground, and there is a kind of intention on the other side to talk to the Iranians from a point of view of respect.
Seriously, dude?
All right, we'll leave it there. Thanks so much.
What makes him better than any of those men? The fact that he raped children, does that make him better? The fact that he married a hooker, does that make him better? The fact that he's been a grifter his entire life, does that make him better?
Nothing like this exists right now. Countries usually send messages to one
I have
another
my windows
either
open,
directly or
and I can
indirectly.
smell weed.
This is
Somebody's
not
getting
called
high.
negotiation, but this does exist right now. We have received messages from the US. Some are direct, some are through some of our regional friends. And wherever it is necessary, we reply to these messages. However, no negotiation has taken place, and the reports about that are not accurate. Discussions through messages are ongoing, and Mr. Witkoff has sent messages directly. Like I've said, this does not mean negotiation. These exchanges happen during both peace and war. We have not given any response to that 15-point proposal from the US. And from our side, there has been no proposal either. The reality
Of course there's
is
been no
that we have
proposal,
never
'cause
had a
Trump's
good
a liar.
experience from negotiations with the US. One time years ago, we negotiated, and we even got a deal, and then the US withdrew without any explanation. And twice last year, and now this year, we negotiated with the US.
His approval
and the
rating is
result was an attack
33%.
by them. And so, we do not have any faith that negotiations with the US will yield any results. The trust level is at zero. And it's normal that when they propose negotiations, the first thing that is important for us to assess is how honest they are in the process. We don't see honesty. This trust does not exist. And for trust to be built, big steps need to be taken so that we can be in a situation where a negotiation can even take place.
Well, Trita Parsi is the Executive Vice President of the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. He joins us now from Washington, D.C. Good to have you with us. So a lot of important statements just dropped in the last few minutes, Trita. Let's start with the idea that the U.S. will leave Iran, the U.S. President says, when it decides it's put Iran sufficiently in the Stone Age and when it decides it is not in a position to have nuclear weapons. What do you make of that possibility that the US can unilaterally say, we think we've done enough damage and we're leaving? Does the war end?
And accomplish nothing?
They won't, because the Iranians will continue to control the
No
Strait of
regime
Hormuz,
change.
and they will probably continue to shoot at Israel.
No nuclear destruction.
And also, I think what we're seeing in this statement is
Trita,
essentially
let me
the
jump in
Israelization.
and put to you what
If Trump
Donald
just packs up his
in
toys
that
and
same
leaves, what was the
speech said
point of
about
any
that.
of
He said,
this?
that'll be France's problem. Trita, if you can hear me, I was saying Donald Trump said concerning the Strait of Hormuz, that will be France's problem. Does that indicate that the US will just say, we don't care anymore about the Strait of Hormuz, let someone else sort it out?
I think there's two elements here. One is him trying to create a narrative of success in which he no longer includes the opening of Strait of Hormuz as part of the American objectives. And secondly, I think it's deep frustration because Trump was hoping that these European powers would come and assist.
Same regime is still in charge, John.
But they have no reason to do so.
Doesn't matter who the head or the leader of it is. Same regime.
The most powerful navy in the world. If the U.S. cannot do it, what difference does it make if the French or other Europeans join in?
You are so gullible, John. I mean, and you're 80 years old, right? Aren't you the guy that's 80?
Saying, look, the U.S. doesn't need the Strait of
And you're
Hormuz.
this gullible at 80?
You are hurting from this.
Do you have dementia?
And as a result, you will have to deal with this yourself.
I mean, you should get tested.
Taking such a step, but even if he does, the Iranians will likely continue to fire at Israel, and the Israelis will continue to the war as well. So I don't think it is as easy as for Trump to just walk out. But the fact that he says that he wants to bring the Iranians back to the Stone Age is essentially the Israelization of America's war aims here. This is how the Israelis are conducting the war.
Somebody's running the country.
Strategic objectives
No,
beyond
my
the fact that
apologies
they
then,
just
John.
want to make sure that their neighbors are as weak
Must have been
as
somebody
possible,
else.
and every 2 or 3 years they bomb them again. This is the mowing the lawn strategy. In fact, Trump really laid it out and said that the next president would also then have to bomb Iran in a couple of years.
Someone's still running
This is
Iran.
not a strategy that the United States has pursued.
And it's the same
elsewhere.
regime.
But we
It's the
are
same
seeing
people.
increasingly how the Israelis brought the U.S. into this war, and the Israelis are defining how this war is being conducted and also defining what the goals of this war should be.
I have no common
Trita,
sense.
he
Thanks, man.
mentioned 2 to 3
Are you willing
weeks
to put
to
American
relieve
kids on the
Iran,
ground,
2
boots
to
on the
3
ground
weeks. How
in
does that
Iran?
fit
You want to talk
in
common sense?
with the troop build-up that's taking place and the suggestion that maybe
You open to it?
some kind
You want
of
it to
ground
happen?
operation would happen.
You want American kids coming home in body
I
bags
think we
for
have to
Trump's
be very
war of
careful
choice?
about any of these statesmen. Remember, at first they said that this war would be over in 4 days. Then 3 weeks ago, they said it would take 3 weeks. 3 weeks have passed, and now we hear that it's 2 to 3 weeks. The timeline just keeps on being extended because at the end of the day, the United States is no longer in control of this war. This war has turned into a debacle, and it would be much better for Trump to just end it as quickly as possible through real negotiations, not these type of coercive measures that has been tried so far. Otherwise, 3 weeks from now, we're likely going to hear that it's going to take.
That's all
another
Trump
3
has
weeks.
is being a bully.
How significant is it that he's talking about that there will be a departure and basically the Straits of Hormuz will not be the US's problem. Is that an issue which the US can distance its economy from?
I mean, the United States is not importing any oil from the Persian Gulf. Now, there's a lot of other goods that are going through the Straits, of course, but the countries that would be most affected by this would be Europe and Asian countries. However, if
And
those
Trump
countries
completely
end up
fucked
making
them.
their own deals with Iran, as some of them already have, the Strait would essentially be opened up for countries that are not hostile to Iran and who will be paying the Iranians some form of a transit fee. Now, that would be a significant win for the Iranians. Now, Trump may be able to just wash his hands of it and say that he doesn't care, but the rest of the world will see this as a massive American failure, and they will hold him responsible for the manner that it will continue to affect the global economy.
And he talked about how this will not be a problem that comes up again for many years, at which
You should
point
really
there
look
will
into
be
and research
another
that
US
pallet of
president who
cash
said that
deal,
hopefully
John,
will do
before
the
you run
same
your
as
mouth.
he's done and launch
I mean,
a
really,
war.
really
Does
read
this
about it.
mean that we're
Learn
looking
about it.
at an extended period of repeated cycles of conflict rather than a firm end to this one?
Again, that is exactly how the Israelis are conducting their military strategy. They call it mowing the lawn. Every couple of months or years, they were bombing Gaza even before this genocide began. They've done the same thing against Lebanon. They've done the same thing against Syria, and now they're doing it against Iran and essentially handing over that entire strategy and debacle onto the United States. This has not been the approach of the United States. This has been part of the reason why previous American presidents refused the pressure from Israel to start this war, precisely because they wanted to avoid being in a scenario in which every couple of months or years they would be at war again, and the devastating impact that would have on the global economy, on the US economy, on the US military. Remember, this is a president who just said in his national security strategy a couple of months ago that the US would be leaving the Middle East, who promised voters that he would be leaving the Middle East. If what he says now is true, it means that the United States is going to be further entrenched in the Middle East for years to come.
And briefly, Trito, what strategy or leverage does Iran have to counter that kind of scenario beyond control of the Straits of Hormuz?
Well, that's part of the reason why the Iranians do not want to see an end to this war that enables it to be restarted. They don't want another ceasefire, after which 8 months later, the US and Israel is back bombing Iran. And this is part of the reason why they think that this war should only end in a circumstance in which all sides have concluded that this was too costly, it was a big mistake, and as a result conclude they should not restart.
Half hour left, guys, and I'm done for the night.
To get to that point, there's several different things that they will need to achieve. Some of them may not be achievable. But one of them will be to make sure that they get some degree of sanctions relief from the United States so that they can rebuild themselves after the war. Because if they can't, they believe that that will only dramatically increase the likelihood that Israel and the United States will attack them, because it's exactly the image, the perception of their weakness, which ended up being false. But nevertheless, it was that perception that paved the way for this attack in the first place.
Good to talk to you. Thanks so much. Trita Parsi there from the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft.
Thank you.
As we've mentioned, U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth and President Donald Trump have called
Another
on other
moron.
countries to do more to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Our chief U.S. correspondent Alan Fisher reports from Washington, D.C.
Returning from an unannounced visit to U.S. troops serving in the Middle East, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth called on other countries to do more to keep the Strait of Hormuz open.
President Trump's been willing to do the heavy lifting on behalf of the free world to address this threat of Iran. It's not just our problem set going forward.
Shipping traffic through the waterway has been seriously impacted by the war. 20% of the world's oil passes through there. Iran has effectively closed it off. In a series of early morning social media posts, President Donald Trump urged his NATO allies into action, telling countries that didn't help the US-Israeli war on Iran to either buy American oil, we have plenty, or go to the Strait of Hormuz and just take it. Donald Trump's frustration with NATO now seems as hot as ever, goading them into action in the Strait of Hormuz. His anger particularly focused on France and the United Kingdom. Spain has also banned the US from using bases
I'm
there.
not
A decision
anti-American,
defended
Jeffrey.
by the defense minister.
I love my country.
We fully reject
I don't like
the
Trump.
unilateral, unjustified aggression without any legal framework whatsoever by the United States and
I don't like
Israel
Trump
against
using the
Iran,
military
just as
and
we
putting our
strongly
kids
condemn the
in
angry
caskets
attacks by Iran
to distract
neighboring
from the fact that he raped children. How's that?
The US continues to build up the number of forces it has in the region. No one from the White House down is dismissing the idea of US troops on Iranian territory. But Gulf countries are urging a speedy peace deal.
The threat currently taking place in the Strait of Hormuz, the closure of the strait in this manner, and the threat to the energy industry in the Arabian Gulf region constitutes a real threat to global energy security overall.
Trump's frustration with NATO allies is burnished by rising oil prices in the US. The average price is now the highest in 4 years, and a useful line of attack for political opponents. Alan Fisher, Al Jazeera, at the White House.
Israel is continuing to escalate attacks on Lebanon. A short while ago, Beirut's southern suburbs were hit again. Earlier on Tuesday, 2 people were killed after an Israeli drone struck a vehicle in Khalde, South Lebanon. Several others were injured. The Lebanese Health Ministry has also said more than 20 people, including a paramedic, were killed in a strike on the town of Kfra in southern
There isn't going to be a
Lebanon.
nuke on the way. You guys are so gullible.
Defense Minister,
You
Israel
believe
Katz
anything
said
Trump tells you,
homes
you're an
in
idiot.
southern Lebanon will be demolished.
An
and
idiot.
hundreds
Once
of
again, we don't
thousands of
need voter
displaced
ID in this
Lebanese
country.
won't
We
be
need
allowed to
voter
return.
IQ.
Around
You people would not
600,000
qualify to vote.
Lebanese have been forced from their homes south of the Litani River since Israel's war with Hezbollah began on March the 2nd. The river lies around 30 kilometers from the border with Israel. Katz says the Israeli military will continue to occupy the area even after the war ends to ensure the security of people in northern Israel.
At the end of the operation, the IDF will establish a security zone inside Lebanon on a defense line against anti-tank missiles and will maintain security control over the entire area up to the Litani, including the Litani bridges that will remain, while eliminating the Radwan forces that infiltrated the area and destroying all weapons found there. In addition, the return south of the Litani
Hey, John,
over
I thought Trump
600,000
oblierated it
residents of
last year
southern
when he
Lebanon
bombed them.
who
That's what he
evacuated
said.
north will be strictly
Repeatedly.
prohibited
Obliterated,
until the
obliterated,
safety and
obliterated.
security of the
Anybody that
residents of the
disagreed
north
with
is
him was
guaranteed.
fake news.
All houses in the villages near the border in Lebanon will be destroyed
What
in
happened?
accordance with the model of Rafah and Beit Hanun in Gaza, in order to remove once and for all the threats near the border from the residents of the north.
The UN Security Council has held an emergency meeting on the situation in Lebanon. It came hours after 3 peacekeepers were killed in the south of the country. The UN says it's investigating the attacks and perpetrators are yet to be identified. Gabriel Elizondo reports from the UN headquarters in New York.
The killing of peacekeepers in Lebanon must stop immediately. That was the main message from Jean-Pierre Lacroix, the head of UN peacekeeping operations, during an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council. He also told the Council the blue helmets in southern Lebanon are under intense duress, caught in the crossfire between Israel and Hezbollah.
Faced with immense pressure, including intensified exchanges of fire, direct attacks, obstructions of movement and resupply, UNIFIL continuously reassesses the force's posture to mitigate risks, strengthening force protection, reducing footprint and adjusting operational activities.
The UN says it's investigating the attacks that killed the 3 Indonesian peacekeepers and said the perpetrators have yet to be identified. Israel's ambassador to the UN told the Security Council Hezbollah was responsible, but provided no evidence to back up the claim, only saying it's a dangerous active war zone, to which the Indonesian ambassador said this.
The current escalation did not arise in vacuum. It stems from repeated incursions by the Israeli military into the territory of Lebanon.
French personnel who work with the peacekeepers also are under attack.
Des incidents graves ont également été commis par Israël.
Grave incidents have also been committed by Israel against the French contingent in Nakura, and in particular against the head of the military force. Israeli soldiers have shown an aggressive attitude, carried out intimidation, and attacked the security of the personnel of the French contingent at a time when deconfliction procedures had been duly respected.
Avait été dûment respecté.
The UNIFIL peacekeeping mission was established in Lebanon in 1978.
But last year, the Security Council voted to wind down its operations, and a withdrawal is expected to begin in January. Gabriel Elizondo, Al Jazeera at the United Nations in New York.
Well, let's take a look at some of the day's other news now. In Gaza, there's a line of people speak about, but cannot always see. They call it the Yellow Line, a de facto buffer zone enforced by the Israeli military, cutting across parts of the territory. And as Hani Mahmoud reports from Gaza City, it's reshaping how people live there.
It is not officially marked, and there are no clear signs on the ground. But people in Gaza often know exactly where it is, because getting too close can be extremely dangerous. Over time, this unmarked line has expanded, particularly along the eastern areas of the Strip, pushing Palestinians away from their land once they lived on, farmed, and worked. For many Palestinians, this is where the yellow line begins, an invisible boundary that is increasingly shrinking the space available for people to live. And in a place where most of the population has been already displaced, that loss of space is being felt every day. Across Gaza, nearly 2 million people have already been forced from their homes. Now, with large areas near the boundary effectively off limits, families are being pushed into smaller, more crowded spaces, often with little access to basic services.
Oh my God.
Suddenly, while you're asleep, you hear the sound
You
of
guys are all a
bullets
trip.
hitting the window and the tent.
Oh.
They pierce through the metal sheets, pass right next to you as you sleep, the exit from the other side. I'm afraid for my children when they go out to school. I have 2 daughters who are injured. I worry about them constantly, even when they just step
You guys in
outside
the chat are
tent.
wild.
You feel fear the moment they leave, that they might come back carried in bags.
Ibrahim lives in a tent with her son and granddaughters. She says the uncertainty of being too close to what people describe as a high-risk zone makes daily life even more difficult, where even staying still does not guarantee safety. For others, the impact is economic. Entire areas that once supported small businesses are now out of reach.
The Democratic Party is dead. The Democratic Party is about to take back the House of Representatives and possibly even the Senate.
3 days ago, a young child
And they're the
was
front
killed
runners in
inside the
2028.
Where can we go? We would
Trump
rather
has lit the
die
GOP
in our
on
own
fire.
land, in our own
And he
tents,
doesn't care
than rent a place
because he
from
knows
others.
he's done in a couple of
Where
years.
would we even get the money to rent? Before the war, we had jobs and sources of income, and we lived in our homes.
He used the
with dignity.
GOP to get what he wanted,
His
to
shop
enrich
now
himself
falls
and his
within a
family,
territory he can no longer access.
and that's it.
Part of
He's
what
done.
many says is a growing area under Israeli military control. Along this line, there are also signs of what appears to be a more
Okay, come
permanent
back in
military
November.
presence. Israeli
I'll still be
forces
here.
have set up positions and
Unless
posts
I'm
in
dead.
several
I'm getting
areas.
kind of old, so that's
Some of
possible.
them used, people here say, as launching points for incursions into nearby
Fake news,
neighborhoods.
fake news, you're fake
Local observers
news.
say this expansion is not only restricting movement, but also taking control of more land, preventing Palestinians from returning to homes, farmland, and property.
Yeah, Harris fucked everything up. The Democrats fucked up the whole election up. Waited too long. Once Biden got in, he should have immediately announced he's going to be a one-termer, knock out 4 years and walk away. It would have given other candidates plenty of time to gear up. Democrats completely fucked the goat on that one. I agree 100%, John.
And for those living here, the question is no longer just where to go, but whether there will be a place to return to at all.
And John, yet you're still here.
Hani Mahmoud, Al
Have you
Jazeera,
subscribed yet?
From Gaza City.
You should really subscribe. You'll hate it.
Well, let's quickly recap the breaking news we've been covering this hour. Donald Trump says the U.S. will be leaving Iran very soon and could be gone within 2 to 3 weeks. Speaking at the White House, the president said Tehran does not have to make
This isn't a
deal
podcast
for
either.
the U.S. to end the war. Trump said when Iran is put into what he called the Stone Age and is unable to come up with a nuclear weapon, his forces will leave. I'm going to take a short break. Up next is Talk to Al Jazeera and Hashim Ahlbara's exclusive interview with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. The news continues at the top of the hour.
Secretary Rubio, thank you for talking to Al Jazeera. Let me start by asking you this. Have formal talks begun with Iran, or are they still in direct communications, exploring common ground?
Well, there's messages and some direct talks going on.
Look, it's Clown Shoes Rubio.
Of Iran and the United States, primarily through intermediaries. But
another guy that's never going to be president.
And I think the president always prefers diplomacy, always prefers an outcome. And we could have done this before. I mean, imagine an Iranian regime who, instead of spending billions of dollars supporting terrorist groups and building up all these weapons, had invested.
How about we stop giving billions of dollars to Israel and supporting their terrorism?
So they wouldn't have water shortages, so their economies would provide opportunities.
How about we, instead of spending $1 trillion on a defense budget, we spend that money here on our people?
Very entrepreneurial.
We give them the means to exist and live a decent life.
Spend the wealth of their country to support Hezbollah and Hamas.
How about we don't spend the wealth of our country on forever wars in the Middle East, and we spend it here on our people, on the least among us that need the help.
And all over the world.
Fuck out of here, you
and build these
fucking
drones,
muppet.
build these weapons to threaten their neighbors unnecessarily. So we would always welcome.
You've threatened Greenland, Mexico, Canada,
that had a different view of the future and had a different
Iran,
and if that opportunity
our NATO allies. The fuck is your muppet head talking about?
For Iran at this particular stage of the war?
Iran can never, the Iranian regime can never have nuclear weapons, and they need to stop sponsoring terrorism, and they need to stop building weapons that can.
You need to stop giving my money to fucking Israel, you piece of shit.
They only have one purpose, and that is to attack Saudi Arabia and the UAE and Qatar and Kuwait and Bahrain. That is the range of
You
these
want to
weapons.
invade Greenland,
And they have
you retard.
They've built extraordinary numbers of them, and not to mention, you know, their desire to have this nuclear weapon to threaten and blackmail the world with. That will never be allowed to happen. It's too great a risk.
What would you consider to be the minimum concession from Tehran to bring this conflict to an end?
I think they have to take demonstrable steps towards ending any ambition of having nuclear weapons. If what they want is nuclear energy, there are multiple countries in the region that have or will soon have nuclear energy, and they're going to do it through a well-established mechanism that everyone else has agreed to, and that is that you allow imported fuel to, you import the fuel, and that fuel is used to power up your power grid and provide energy resources for your people. What they cannot have is a system that allows them to quickly weaponize it. They have to stop making all of these drones and all of these missiles. We saw recently where they've lied. They said they didn't have long-range missiles, and then they fired 2 that extended well beyond the range of what their own foreign minister just a few days earlier said they didn't have the range to reach.
People lie.
So they have to abandon all these weapon programs and all of their nuclear ambitions. And if they do that, then
Does
Iran's
Trump
future
lie?
can be bright.
No,
but they
right?
have to choose that path.
Right,
For
MAGA?
47 years,
Trump
they
doesn't lie.
refused that path.
Iran said it rejects the US demands and is setting its own conditions, such as the financial compensation and also recognition of its sovereignty.
Billy Henry, like and subscribe, buddy. Are you talking to me?
Not only is the sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz not acceptable to us, it won't be acceptable to the world. No one in the world can accept it. Number one, it sets an incredible precedent.
Demon
so
rat.
means
That shows your level of
international
creativity
and claim them as their own.
and your
The United
IQ,
States
Billy.
could do that now.
Are you a
the
human
Chinese
or a
could do it
bot?
in the South China Sea.
Are
No
you
one in the world is
in
going to
the
accept
United
that or should
States,
accept that.
or are you
Now, let me be frank. Very little
in some
American
bot
energy
farm
comes
in
from the
India?
Straits of Hormuz in terms of the energy we rely on, but we recognize the impact that it has on global markets and on our neighbors, especially our allies in the region who produce energy and have to get it out to market. So no country in the world should accept it. The regional countries in the world should accept it. The United States will not accept that condition. It's an illegal condition that they're demanding. That's just not going to happen.
As the US-Israeli campaign continues,
Was it legal to go into Venezuela?
The Strait of Hormuz is.
Was it legal to create a humanitarian crisis in Cuba? Was it legal to threaten to invade Greenland?
Are you consider a plan to ensure full control over the entire Strait?
Was it legal what Bibi did to Gaza?
When this operation is over, it will
We can go on and
It will
on.
be open one way or another. It will be open because Iran agrees to abide
It'll be
by
open because you're a
international law
pussy
not block
and your
the
boss is a
commercial
pussy
waterway,
and you're going to pack
or
up your
a coalition
toys and you're going to go
nations around the
home,
world and the region
having
with the
accomplished
participation of
absolutely
the United
nothing
States will make
other
sure
than
that
getting
it's open.
13
One way or
American
the
kids
other, it's
killed,
going to be open.
hundreds more
But we have very
wounded,
clear objectives
wasting all of
that
our
we're trying to
munitions
achieve here.
and
Those objectives
billions,
are the
hundreds of
destruction
billions
their
of
air
taxpayer
forces, which
dollars.
has been achieved,
That's all you
the
will have
destruction of
accomplished
their
here.
Navy, which is largely been
Because you're
achieved,
idiots.
a significant significant reduction in the number of missile launchers that they have, which we're well on our way to achieving. And we are going to destroy the factories that make those missiles and those drones that they are using to attack their neighbors and the United States and our presence in the region. We will achieve those objectives. We are well on our way, or ahead of schedule.
Wrong, John.
We will achieve
Check
them in
gas
weeks,
prices
not months.
at the end of Biden's term. They're lower than they are now. And Biden didn't go out of his way to start a war knowing he would fuck the economy and fuck energy prices.
Not just from the United States, but from regional countries and from the world.
Your regional allies in the region, the critical energy installations are being bombed, the cities bombed almost on a daily basis, and they're looking for a clear path back to stability. What would be your message to them?
Well, I think the best way to stability, given the people who are in charge in Iran, is to destroy the ability of Iran in the future to launch these missiles and these drones against their infrastructure and civilian populations. If you think about
Yes,
what
he
they've
is,
struck in the
Stephen.
region, what has
Stephen
Iran
is a
gone after?
madman.
It's been energy
Marco's a
infrastructure
fucking muppet.
against countries that were not waging war.
Rumor
against
is
them.
Marco
Yet
is
they went
leaving after
these
the
countries
midterms.
nonetheless. This is why they built these missiles
He's
and drones
bugging
in
out.
the first place.
He's leaving
But
his
they've also
position.
attacked embassies, diplomatic
He wants to get ready to run
which is
for
unheard
in
of. They've
28.
attacked airports, which is unheard
And he
of.
probably doesn't
This
want to
is
get
what they've done.
dragged
And
into,
this is a week into Iran.
get subpoenaed
This is
and
an
have
Iran
to
that's
testify
weaker
in
than
front
it's
of
been in
Congress
10
for all the
years.
war crimes
Imagine
and shit that this
5 years from
fucking
now, or 3 years
administration's
from now,
doing.
when they had more missiles,
So he's getting
more
out while the
drones,
getting's
what
good.
they would have been willing to do to their neighbors and to us. That was
I
intolerable.
mean, at least he's
That's why
smart
this
like
needed to be
that.
done now. The United
The
States
fuck
is
out of
committed to
Dodge.
finishing the job. We're working very closely with all of our allies, work very closely in defensive. You know, yes, unfortunately, drones and missiles get through from time to time, but the overwhelming majority of these launches are defeated. They're shot down before they reach their intended target, or the destruction would be far worse. These are strong, stable countries in the region. These are our allies. These are our friends. And we are going to continue to be there and support them as they face this onslaught. And by the way, they're not the ones, Iran is targeting them in retribution, which tells you the nature of the people we're dealing with, unfortunately.
Yep, GOP war crimes, and yeah,
is not going to be the only focal point.
a lot
for
of
you,
Republicans
because with the
resigning.
Houthis stepping in and firing missiles into Israel, Bab el-Mandeb, and
They see the writing on the wall. They're going to get wiped out.
That you will have to reconsider.
It could, and look, that's been an ongoing issue. And when they did that, the United States took action against it as well. And many of our regional allies have had to do so in the past. It's the desire, whether it's the Houthis on one side or Iran on the other, to close these international waterways and create a toll road where basically you have to ask for their permission in order to use them and get your products in or out of market. That's unacceptable. It's unacceptable to us, but it should be unacceptable to the world. And I think it's important, and I'm glad to see the effort Bahrain is leading in the United Nations, which we've been very supportive of, to get an international coalition that says we will not accept a world and where either the Iranians on one side or the Houthis on the other get to control international waterways and impede the free flow of goods from nation states. That's just not something we're going to accept, neither should the world.
Do you have any issues with Mujtaba Khamenei staying in power once this is over, and the IRGC continuing to play the crucial role it plays now?
Well, let me say, first of all, we don't even know if he's in power. I know they say he's in power. No one has seen him. No one has heard from him. It's very opaque right now. It's not quite clear how decisions are being made inside of Iran. But our objectives here from the very beginning had nothing to do with the leadership. But would we love to see a difference?
And he's not answering the question.
People of Iran deserve better leadership than what they've gotten from the clerical regime, 100%.
Sure
Would
they
we
do.
be heartbroken if there was a change in leadership? Absolutely not. If there's something
But you
we
don't
can
have the
do
balls to
facilitate
get
that,
it done,
would
do
we
you?
be interested in participating? Of course. But that was not the objective of this operation. The objective of this operation,
Really?
which I outlined
Really?
now and the President outlined clearly on the first night, is the destruction of their Air Force, which we've achieved, the destruction of their Navy, which we've largely achieved, the destruction of their factories, which we are well on our way to achieving, meaning factories that make these weapons, and significantly reducing the number of missile launchers that they have so they can't continue to threaten their neighbors and America. Those were our objectives. That's what we're focused on, and that's what we are well on our way towards achieving.
Are you fully aligned with the Israelis when it comes to the objectives and the end game?
Well, they have a different objective in terms of they are focused on the mid-range missiles in the northern part of Iran that target them. And obviously we coordinate and deconflict with them in terms of our operations. But what they are focused on is different. We're not critical of it. Those things are threats to them. Those mid-range missiles that Iran launches that reach into Israel, those are threats that they're facing. They're also facing a threat from Hezbollah, which they're confronting as well. So they have their own objectives. We deconflict so that our objectives and theirs don't run into each other. But the President, for the United States of America, has established a very clear mission, which we're
Bye, Billy.
executing
Don't
on,
forget to
and we
like and
will achieve
subscribe,
our
buddy.
objectives in a matter of weeks.
Do you believe the EU and NATO countries betrayed the US at this crucial moment?
I think it was very disappointing. You have this, and again, look, the president and our country will have to re-examine all of this after this operation is over. But one of the reasons why NATO is beneficial to the United States is it gives us basing rights for contingencies. It allows us to station troops and aircraft and weapons and in parts of the world that we would normally have bases. And that includes in much of Europe. And to see that in a time of need, the United States has identified a grave risk to our national security and our national interests, and we needed to conduct this operation. And we have countries like Spain, a NATO member, that we are pledged to defend, denying us the use of their airspace and bragging
I agree,
about
Jimmy.
it, denying
It's going to
us
be
the
a
use
wipeout.
of their bases. And
Make
there are
sure
other
you
countries
vote.
that have done that as well. And so you ask yourself, well, what is in it for the United States? And I've been a big supporter of NATO. And one of the reasons why I've been a supporter of NATO is because I believe that these basing rights give us leverage and give us flexibility and operational capability all over the world. But if NATO is just about us defending Europe if they're attacked,
Yep,
but them denying
I
us
agree.
basing rights when we need them, that's not a very good arrangement. That's a hard one to stay engaged in and say this is good for the United States. So all of that's going to have to be re-examined. All of it's going to have to be re-examined.
I've recently spent some time in Europe, and basically what they say is that it's the US which is sending confusing messages to us. It's the US which is planning to disengage from Europe. It's the US which doesn't seem to be really willing to team up with NATO when it comes to moving forward in Europe. And this explains the reason why we have been very cautious dealing with the Americans when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz in particular.
Well, if that's what someone in Europe told you, that person's very disingenuous, because the United States has tens of thousands of troops stationed throughout that region, billions of dollars of weaponry staged throughout Europe. All of it there to defend Europe, not to defend America, to defend Europe from attack, okay, all over. The United States is, without the United States, there is no NATO. I mean, everyone recognizes that, including NATO. If we decided tomorrow that we were going to remove our troops from Europe, that would be the end of NATO. So they know that. And that commitment, we haven't moved troops out of NATO. So anyone who said that's not being honest or is not, I think they're playing games. At the end of the day, it's very simple. NATO is an alliance, and an alliance means it has to be mutually beneficial. It cannot be a one-way street. Let's hope we can fix it. We'll have time to address it after. Right now, we're focused on this operation.
Let's move on to something else. I would like to talk to you about Venezuela after the capture of President Nicolas Maduro. Could you tell us more about your plans for Venezuela in the future?
I think it's moving along very well. We said it from the very first day after that operation happened. I said our hope is, number one, to stabilize
remove
the country.
Maduro
we didn't
and
want to see
take the
civil
oil,
war.
right?
We didn't want to see systemic collapse. We didn't want to see a mass migration event. You've seen none of these things. What you've seen is that for the first time in decades, Venezuela is now selling their oil in the global market at full market price, and the money is coming back to Venezuela and being spent for the benefit of the Venezuelan people. It's being spent to buy medical goods and equipment. It's being spent to cover the salaries of teachers and police officers and civil servants and people that, sanitation workers and things of this nature. So it's a very important part. The second phase, after the stabilization occurs, or concurrent with the stabilization, is a period of recovery in which you try to recover the elements of the country that allow it to prosper and grow, and that is attracting businesses back, creating the kind of stability that bring businesses back. We're seeing that begin to happen. But you're also seeing civil life come back to life. Independent media is now allowed to operate. Political prisoners have been released. Political parties are forming again. People are speaking and participating in public life. And finally, you want to see a full transition, because in order for Venezuela to fulfill its economic potential, it has to have a stable democratic government that people are willing to invest in that economy because they know that they're protected by laws and courts and legitimacy. So we are well on our way to achieving this. A lot of credit goes to the interim authorities who have assumed this responsibility. We've reopened our embassy. We enter in dialogue with them every single day. We feel very positive about it.
Many assume Washington will focus on Cuba next once the war is over in the Middle East. What kind of decisions or policy would you would like to see in place for potential regime change?
Yeah, look, we don't need anything from Cuba, to be honest with you. I mean, Cuba needs from us, we don't need from Cuba. What I mean by Cuba, I mean it's their regime. The problem Cuba has, it's a very fundamental problem, and they need to understand it, and we've tried to explain it to anyone who will listen. Their system doesn't work. Their system of economics, I can't even
You're starving them
describe it,
out.
but it's completely
You're creating a
dysfunctional. It's just
humanitarian
not a real
crisis there.
system. And you can't change it unless you change the government. As an example, a week ago they said, well, Cuban Americans can now invest on the island. Invest in what? Invest in a country that has arbitrary laws, no established system of courts and justice. Who's going to invest in something like that? You also can't have economic prosperity without some significant level of political freedom. If I'm going to participate in the economic life of a country and I don't like the regulations or the rules that government is putting in place that are hampering me, I have to have the ability to complain about that. And in that country, you can't complain about that or you'll be put in jail. So I think Cuba needs to make...
You can't complain here either, because otherwise you're fake news.
They put themselves in, meaning the regime has put them in. They really need to undertake very serious reforms of both their government and of their economy. And if they're willing to do so, we're going to help them. We've done nothing punitive against the Cuban regime. They claim we have, but we haven't. The only thing that's changed
You're
for the
starving
Cuban
out the
regime is
people.
they're not getting free Venezuelan oil anymore. They're not getting subsidies anymore. That's the only thing that's changed. These blackouts that are occurring that I see people reporting have nothing to do with us. They were having blackouts last year. They're having blackouts because they have equipment from the 1950s in their grid that they've never maintained and never upgraded because they're incompetent. That's why they're having blackouts.
So, Adil, my last question, if you don't mind. Do you have any sense of clarity about when the war is going to be over in the Middle East?
The operation in Iran, as soon as we achieve our objectives. As I've
What are
outlined
your
them
objectives,
repeatedly,
Marco?
And that is we've destroyed their navy, we've destroyed their air force.
No.
We are well on our way to destroying
That's not what
the
you were
majority
saying a
of
couple
their
weeks
arms
ago, buddy.
factories, and
It
we're
was
well on
regime
our way to
change. It was helping
significantly degrading
Israel.
their missile launchers. When those objectives are achieved, we will have achieved the purpose of this operation, and that's something that's not going to take months. That's a matter of weeks. I'm not going to tell you exactly how many weeks, but a matter of weeks, not months.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Trump's going to run away with his tail between his legs. All right, guys, that's it for tonight. Thanks for joining. You guys have been great in the chat. Thanks for all the participation. I'll be back again tomorrow at like noon, I believe.
Americans
all right, later.
didn't have any clear